This week, you got a bad box again. Cameras are exposed to the internet, the EU and connected devices, hydrophobia, NVRAM variables, and have you heard about IGEL Linux? Because I had not. SSH and more NVRAM. AI skeptics are nuts, and AI doesn't make you more efficient, according to experts. Trump cybersecurity orders. I think I can now root my Pixel 6. Decentralized WordPress plugin manager, threat actor naming conventions, and other such lies. I have the phone number that's linked to your Google account, Fortinet flaws, exploited in ransomware attacks, and how a lack of information sharing is killing us. Retiring floppy disks, fault injection for the masses. There is no defender. AI blackmails, all that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. Coming to you from the Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 878, being recorded on Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian, joined here in studio. Woo! Live in studio, Mr. Larry Pesce. You can say live in studio.
Yeah.
I'll explain that in a moment. But
Yeah.
Let me get through the introducing the cast of characters. Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us.
Speaking
Fresh back from St. Louis and ShowMeCon. Happy to be
Very
here.
nice. Well, you can't say that. They didn't send us bourbon, Jeff, so we can't talk about it. That's the rule.
I'll
It's the
let
rule.
Dave,
I didn't create
I'll
the
let
rule.
Dave know, and we'll have something.
Sounds
for
good.
next
Miss
year.
Mandy Logan is here with us.
Why,
Mandy,
thank you, and
welcome.
I'm incredibly interested about the Pixel 6 story because that's what I was just trying to do and failed.
Ooh, interesting. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's what is it? It's Wednesday. Hot damn.
It is Wednesday all day.
Yes.
Welcome, my friend. Mr. Bill Swearingen is
Hey,
here with us.
thanks for having me, Paul. I'm watching the Discord, so if anybody wants to talk to Paul, you have to go through me.
That's it. Bill is the keeper of the Discord tonight.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Mr. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
Thank you so much. And remember that Bill can be bribed with nudes or pictures of interesting things. Okay?
Or bourbon. Bourbon.
Bourbon.
Bourbon is a popular bribe topic here.
Yeah.
A quick announcement before we get started. Cyber threats are moving fast. Are your credentials already out there? Join Channel E2E and Flare for Tales from the Dark Web, a live webcast revealing how info stealer malware and account takeovers happen and how to stop them. See real-time demos, learn proactive defense strategies, and discover how Flare's identity intelligence can keep your data safe. June 12th. Hey, if you're listening to this, that's
Yesterday.
today. It's yesterday. No, it's anyway at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Register securityweekly.com/dark web. At least our live audience got that because we're testing live streaming again.
Yes.
So excited. So our live stream is for our Discord server members only. Now can watch the show live. We'll call this kind of like a beta to get started because we're just starting to reintroduce live streaming for Paul Security Weekly. This show, check the PSW channel on our Discord server. If you'd like to join our Discord server, you can visit securityweekly.com/Discord. However, Sam, if you're listening, I don't know if that invite is working or not. It told me it was invalid, but then I checked and it told me in the Discord settings that it wasn't invalid. So I don't know if it's just invalid for me or what, but we'll get that sorted out. In the meantime, if you can't join the Discord server, or you need an invite, you can hit up any one of us and we can send you an invite, and that will give you the link to watch our show live Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this shindig with all of us fine folks, which is exciting.
Like we used to back in the day.
Back in the day. And Bill will be monitoring the Discord. Bill is the Discord monitor.
Or one or two
Hey, there's a
others.
few of us in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's a lot of comments going on right now in the Discord. Going
Interesting.
wild.
I will now have to set up a screen so I can see the Discord while we're doing the show. I did not get a chance to do that today because one of my computers
I'll log into Discord.
Why do computers
FOMO.
like hey? Sometimes computers just freak out. I have a T-shirt that says that Dr. Doug made me. And
Doesn't that kind of run counter to the whole Linux talk you just gave at RVASec? Like we just literally went through this.
It wasn't Linux freaking out. Linux was sort of fine. It just freaked out. I don't know. That's my best. It wouldn't turn on, and then it did turn on, and then it would not connect to the network. And I'm like, what is? And then it did, and I was like, okay. And I didn't really do much except reboot a couple of times and like wave my hands over it in a magical motion, and then it worked. So
you tried turning it off and on again, huh?
I did several times for good measure. It was weird. Anyway, let's start with the bad box. So I think I've talked about this on the show before, but a lot of us have our own favorite movie that we think is really great, and it's like a really bad movie, and a lot of other people think it's a really bad movie, but we just love this movie. And
you mean like Hackers?
Like Star Wars?
Yeah, sort of. But like, no, nothing like too pop. Like mine is, remember Method Man and Redman did a movie called How High in the early 2000s? That is like one of my favorite, like really bad movies that I don't think anyone really remembers. But in the movie, Method Man's friend says, like, you're such a great friend, Method Man. Like, you know, if I were to get myself on fire, like, I'd still have your back. If I were to get run over by a bus, I'd have your back. And then that character in the movie dies exactly the way he describes and comes back as a ghost. It's a long story. He uses his ashes to grow marijuana, and every time he smokes marijuana, he can see his friend. This is the like beginnings of a plot of the greatest movie ever, just in case you're wondering, right? So when his friend comes back, Method Man was like talking about his death, and he's like, "You predicted that shit." And so that's the quote that's going in my head when I read the Bad Box story, because we've talked about this before, first of all, several times. This is like the third wave of Bad Box malware that I believe we're seeing on the internet, and it still persists today, right? Cheap Android devices have malware that's pre-installed. People buy them on Amazon, AliExpress. They get infected with malware. The attackers, so what they told us recently, which is somewhat new, is they were able to trace this back to specific threat actor groups, but that there were a lot of different threat actor groups involved taking advantage of this malware.
So
who knows in
just make sure I
cooperation
have
with
this
each other?
straight. The devices themselves come with the malware first. That's
Correct.
what you're saying. Gotcha. Okay.
Correct. And then these threat actor groups are kind of having a field day, perhaps sharing information, sharing access, who knows, you monetizing it by doing advertisements, clickjacking, ad pay for click malware on them. So, and I think some of the difficulties are new devices ship with like slight variations of the malware. So like you might take down some of it, but then all these new devices shipping and they're just bringing us new malware, which is just amazing. It's a constant onslaught of bad behavior, I wrote. So I predicted this as far back as 2014. I actually have a slide on it, which is hilarious, from 2014. So like 11 years ago now.
Wow.
I have, can I put that up? No, go away. AI thing. I don't want AI. I want you to see my slide. And so I said, like, who cares if you hack my IoT device? I'm like, well, attackers are going to use it to monetize. And I'm like, I think they would monetize in ads. Like if I had to think about what attackers would do, and I'm not the only one saying this, right? A lot of us have been saying the same thing for years. But it reminded me of another cult classic movie, Idiocracy, where he's watching what in the movie is a popular TV show called On My Balls, and around the screen is all advertisements, right? And I'm like, well, this could be where attackers go. they're going to put advertisements on hacked IoT devices, smart TVs, and then monetize it. And if we switch back to Bad Box, that's exactly what they're doing.
Do they put advertisements on it?
They put advertisements on it.
Really?
Man.
Interesting. Because,
So,
I mean, there's
Well, I don't know. They're not visible advertisements, but stuff that I think the malware is going to URLs to simulate a click, and they're monetizing.
So they're leveraging advertising. I mean,
Right,
just way monetizing. Yeah, ransomware it, advertise, rent it out as a botnet.
They did ransomware for a little while, but I think
it's probably more lucrative to keep them up and running and doing something.
Yeah,
like
I know.
this.
Like, is anybody going to pay $1 million to get their $100 TV back? Right?
Yeah, I just buy a new one, like that. Especially the Android TV devices.
Yeah.
They're like some of them are like $30
Yeah.
or less.
How do you know if you're impacted or infected with this? Like, is it just that if
Do you have a cheap Android TV?
Right.
Then you have an infection.
Right.
Not
Call Larry
necessarily.
Pesci. He's the expert on infections.
So, Bill, to answer your question, there is a list of domain names.
Oh.
So what you have to do is intercept the domain name resolution. Someone in one of the waves of this had Pi-hole set up and noticed it in Pi-hole. And Pi-hole would be a great place to take that list of domains
For
in there
sure.
and black hole them, right? But that can also be an indicator of compromise. If on the Eclipsium blog, I have a whole article that talks about how to root these Android devices, pull the file system, get the APKs, and look for the indicators of compromise on your Android device. I don't expect people who are not in our field to be able to do that, right? But that's for us. If you want to see if a device has this stuff, I kind of consolidated a bunch of the research on there. I didn't do much original research on that. A little bit, not much.
So I remember you doing that work, Paul, and from what I remember, there is a a little bit of a gray line when you start looking at those APKs of what is malware and what's advertising. Like I remember when you were doing that. That's right? Is that I got that right? It was
like some packages are completely benign until they get an update, and then they're malicious, and then people notice and they go, "Oh no, we're benign again," and then they're malicious, and they just kind of keep going back and forth.
Yeah, so it's going to be. I mean,
annoying.
that would be really interesting to look into this. So I agree with you. So a Pi-hole device, or maybe putting your home internet using like an umbrella or Quad 9 or something like that, looking for these, for those IOCs in here would be interesting. But then, so like, what do you do if your TV is talking to this, or your TV box? I don't.
So what some people have done is they block on their firewall the communications.
Yeah.
So like their device is still infected.
Yeah.
But they're just blocking the communications. Other people, like what I showed in the blog post, if you can root the device, you can go in and you can clean it up. And you can remove the offending APKs. If you don't have root, there's only so much you can do because of protections in Android that don't allow you to remove certain packages.
Yeah.
It is nice to be able to root these Android devices because you can clean up a bunch of the other crapware they put on there. I think you've got everyone's Android device that has or TV that has that functionality, and you're like, I don't need all these apps. Let me remove them.
Yeah.
And the OS is like, no, I can't let you do that.
Yeah, I have some Apple devices like that too. But so also I think that this is a really good reason to segment your network when you start thinking what is an IoT. Like make sure you're considering your TVs as that as well, right?
Absolutely.
But it needs to discover and act with everything on my network, dude. Come on.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Segmentation in the home network, right?
Yeah.
Oddly, it's funny. Now these days, a lot of the home networks, if you have a guest network, it's enforcing the segmentation and separation of devices that your regular network isn't.
Yeah, and host isolation as well. Right?
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. So this looks like it's just targeting Android devices, which doesn't mean that's a horrible subset. And they had a table of devices, but it doesn't look very useful to the average human. I mean,
I was disappointed in that too, Lee.
I mean, it's cool. I understand their fingerprinting and stuff, but I'm not sure that would help me determine if my, particular Android TV was impacted.
I was plugging some of those device names into Amazon, and sometimes it would come back with an actual Android TV device, and sometimes it wouldn't. Mm-hmm. It's not very descriptive what they put in there. Sometimes it looks like just a model number without the manufacturer.
Yeah, that's what
it was. It's a weird table. It's a weird table.
Yeah, it says One of the
C2
device
domains
models
is cool, though.
Smart TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's all it says. So I'm like, is the table like multi-dimensional? Is that like that's not a row? This is just like a glob of data? Let's see if I can find it and show.
You like big globs, though.
I like big globs of data. I mean, who doesn't like a big glob of data? I mean, there's like a big glob of data. Like,
Yeah, there you go.
He likes big globs. We like big globs.
The columns across the top all say device model, which, I mean,
Sure.
you probably could have just like made that all one row and just put device model once.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could have put manufacturer, then device model, and then
Even better.
firmware version or package that's infected would have been like super helpful.
I like that the iSyn box. That sounds like a device I could get behind.
Yeah, smart. Like just
That is
smart.
there's two of them in different capitalizations.
Just smart _ TV. Like what is that? What does that mean?
I mean, I
don't know
think a
what that-
person made this table. I don't think AI made this. This is so bad that I actually think a person made this.
Some of the ones on here are ones that I've tested. I want to say I tested the X88
box. Box. Wait.
This one just says smart. Like
Smart.
It's just smart.
It's not
Yep.
very smart.
Oh yeah,
Not very smart.
yeah.
X960 kind of sounds familiar.
Hey
Yeah,
Paul, I want you
there's-
to check your network to see if you have this device. It's called Smart. Huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Smart. You have Smart.
Nothing smart on my network.
Yeah.
Smart.
And we all know Paul doesn't have a long TV. He's
Nothing smart using the network either most days, let's
Right.
be honest here.
Yes. Right. Anyway,
Is it iSyn box or is it is in box?
I like
What is it?
iSynbox.
iSynbox,
think
right?
how many kids do you
That's-
have?
Well, there's two of them. There's the iSyn box up to.
I got to go
one
back
to
to
the right.
It. This is iSynbox.
So up to and one to the. Oh,
Oops.
Larry,
I
Larry,
tried to
Larry,
make it bigger.
How many
and
kids do you
then-
have?
two.
Don't you know the difference by now?
two?
Where'd it go? I lost it now. Where's the table? Is this even the same blog post now? What happened?
Oh no!
I tried to. There it is. There it is.
Yep. So third column, about the fifth.
Would that be in the device model?
Yeah,
column?
it's in the device model column. Yep. In that row, yeah. Keep going.
Oh.
So the iSyn box,
That's the Apple version of the iSyn box because of the way it's capitalized.
and then if you go down to one device.
Oh, and this is the Linux version because it's all lowercase.
Yeah. But the question is now this Linux version, is it iSyn box or is inbox?
Is inbox. Ooh. Ooh. I don't know.
Ouch,
It's a
Larry.
mystery. It's a mystery.
Human security, if you're out there, can you update that with like something
This
better?
almost
Take
makes
that
me
first
not want to wear
first
the
step.
T-shirt I have from them.
Oh no!
What iSynbox?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far.
well, the
I mean,
iSynbox T-shirt.
it's we all live in glass houses, man. Like someday I'm going to post a blog post and put something ridiculous in there, and I'm going to
Yeah,
fix
someday,
it. And
Paul.
then
Someday.
Mandy,
well,
Mandy, Mandy.
okay,
What?
I probably
What?
have
What,
done
Josh?
something
It's okay.
similar,
What?
right?
We all sin.
No,
I sin as
I
well.
send box too.
In a box, right?
In a box.
I sin in a box.
Okay,
Keep my sins in a
comment,
box.
no
It's the
comment,
sin
no
box. That's where I keep my sins.
Even
what about your
Bill's
axe?
embarrassed.
Where'd-
I win.
where'd you-
I win one internet.
Hey,
But where do you keep your
Paul
axe?
back?
If you
Remember
keep
in the old days when we had Human Security as a sponsor before this show?
Were they? Yeah, I know, right? Oops, sorry. Human security. I got like
This is
4
really cool,
UEFI.
actually.
So I'm just prepping everyone. I got like 4 UEFI stories.
Oh Christ!
Why don't
I'm
you
out.
save that to the end and we can all
Look.
log off?
You know,
The old solo show.
I didn't plan it this way, Jeff. I don't control when they release vulnerabilities.
But you control how many of them you discuss on the show.
But they're all important.
Is Jeff out of bourbon?
You had one of the stories, Larry.
I am not out of bourbon.
Have you met
Everyone
Jeff?
bourbon.
No, I did.
Bourbon
And
out.
you know why I put that one in? Because I didn't know
Just
if you
for me?
because I didn't know if you had seen about it.
Dude,
seen
I
it.
almost missed. I almost missed it because
'Cause-
there were so many. Like one of our coworkers, Jesse Michael, my coworkers, Jesse Michael, was like doing expert commentary on the Ars Technica article for Dan Gooden. I'm like, oh, it has to be this vulnerability that I just created a ticket for, so we have coverage in our product.
No, that's a
and-
different one.
Nope, it's a different one. And I'm like, oh wait, there's another one. And then I was like, oh wait, there's the other one that someone found using Chat GPT, and that makes 4. I'm like, can't you guys spread these out? You know how much work that is in my day job when there's 4 in 1 week like that? Like the week's not even over. Oh, there's going to be a 5th one now?
And so the only reason I put it in, I'm like, I'm going to get one on Paul because you didn't talk about it like you use Arch. Because normally you're all over the internal Slack about it. I'm like, there's a UEFI one. I'm like, Paul hasn't seen this one. I bet.
Well, I was busy creating tickets internally to track all these things, quite frankly. My week has been busy, okay?
Well, at least you got some tickets created.
I did. They're created. I mean, that's a start. Well, let's
Hopefully
talk about
not all assigned to Paul.
Let's talk. No, thankfully I create them, and other people do the work. That's my work is finding the public disclosure or not so public disclosure, and then creating tickets.
So tell us a little bit about these UEFI exploits, Paul.
Okay, so we'll go there.
50 words or less.
Per.
It's
Sorry,
bad, and attackers can bypass secure boot with all 4 of
which
them.
number?
And
So what's new and different this time around?
What was that question,
What
Mandy?
number story?
we can. There's a lot of them. You can start with 15. 15 is hydrophobia.
It's in somewhere in one of Paul's first 50
The
stories.
first 50, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first one is, and I have a blog post drafted on this, which hopefully comes out tomorrow. CVE
Paul's number 15, hydrophobia.
CVE 2025-4275. This was an independent researcher that found vulnerability in. So essentially, the way this one works is there are NVRAM variables that you can modify and put information about certificate trusts, and the system will trust those variables. And these variables can be modified by the user from the operating system. So it's like in UEFI has a partition on the SPY flash called NVRAM, just like routers that we worked with back in 2007. And NVRAM, and it's same NVRAM like on WT54Gs and routers. It's basically a partition that can hold environmental variables, right? Like very similar, like variable name and a value. UEFI has those. The difference with UEFI, I'm not sure how other firmware handle this, but UEFI protects those variables in different ways. And there's different levels of protection. Some can only be modified in certain ways and have certain protections. So the hydrophobia is basically oops, we forgot to protect these variables, or we let these unprotected variables dictate the root of trust, essentially. So that's the way that one works. So an attacker with local privileges, this is not just physical attack, but local privileges can exploit this, leading to persistent malware rootkits or full system compromise. And this was specific to inside H2O firmware. So major BIOS UEFI manufacturers, AMI, Phoenix, inside, right? So this has been inside BIOS. And of course, the supply chain aspect of this is they make the UEFI firmware, and then OEMs take that firmware and they put it on a whole bunch of laptops and desktops and servers. So this could affect potentially millions of devices. I'm not sure if this was the one they said affected millions of devices, but it very well could. And then we have one that was discovered by Binarly.
Wait, I have a question on
That was
hydrophobia.
the one I posted.
Oh, hydrophobia.
Yeah. So go back to the vulnerability on the 4th point under the vulnerability heading. When it says there needs to be a mechanism for BDS DXE to relay the certificate to security stub DXE, is it relay or relay?
Probably relay. Where is that in the article?
Under vulnerability ? The 4th bullet point. When it says they chose the worst
However,
in VR.
BDS DXE that reads the signing certificate for the firmware updater and security sub DXE that performs authentic code verification. So there needs to be a mechanism for BSE to relay the certificate to the there is a typo in there. It should be relay.
I'm not trying to pick on their typo. I was just literally trying to figure out what else would be a relay for a certificate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I love it. Of all the options, the inside
engineers right.
picked in 2012, this was the worst.
Right.
Why was it the worst?
NVRAM.
Well, because what I was describing is NVRAM is volatile, right? Volatile and non-volatile, and has all those protections which can get messy, basically. what they could be, the author could be hinting towards is store them somewhere else, like in a TPM, perhaps, would be probably a much better place to store root of trust information. Binarily discovered one. There was a UEFI application signed with Microsoft's UEFI CA 2011 certificate, right? So Microsoft owns a large portion of the root of trust for secure boot. So they've got a certificate that they can sign software with, and there was a piece of software that was signed with Microsoft's key. So Microsoft signed it, basically. And the flaw allows privilege to exploit a function that performs arbitrary memory writes in attacker control. Again, back to NVRAM variables. By manipulating an NVRAM variable, an attacker can overwrite critical memory addresses. So that one, I think, was the one that was pretty widespread. Like, there's a lot of things that have, a lot of systems have this certificate, which means if there's a piece of software that's signed in that root of trust with that certificate, you can take that to any system and boot and use it and then exploit the vulnerability in it. This is what's weird about like these UEFI secure boot things, is you can kind of bring your own thing that's signed for the sole purpose of exploiting it to then bypass secure boot.
Could they have taken that certain sign something in a non-Microsoft system that would then allow it to boot crap?
Correct. So the secure boot root of trust is operating system independent.
Right. Because I was at first thinking, well, this would be a Windows only thing, and I thought, wait, isn't that independent? And so, damn.
It's funny. We actually we wrote a check that shipped in our product that detects if you have a dual boot Windows and Linux system or not. And like, if you're not dual booting Windows and Linux, but you have a Linux specific piece of software on your EFI partition, that's highly suspect. That means someone probably brought like a Linux bootloader to buy. That's like the Black Lotus attack, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of a nice fingerprint.
Actually, Black Lotus was a Windows bootloader, but theoretically you could bring a Linux bootloader.
Same principle though.
Yep, exactly.
You got that wrong OS piece sitting there, bada bing. Because your next one is a Linux specific one, right?
Yeah. So yes, because this is a kernel mod. I believe the issue with IGEL OS 10, which is a Linux distribution that at least Jesse and I had never heard of. I don't know if you folks are really into IGEL Linux. IGEL Linux.
Definitely IGEL. It's very
you
sticky.
use Arch. You use Arch.
I like Moose.
Yeah, I use Arch,
prefer to
by
use
the way.
Moose.
Yeah,
Moose. Hannah
So do
Montana
I.
Linux is my favorite, actually.
Red Star.
Yeah.
So there's a flash driver Linux module that allows an attacker to boot a malicious or modified root file system from an unverified squash FS. So basically, you bring this module and you can load a different kernel that, although it's signed, will be signed, is essentially how it works, right? So system boots with the Microsoft signed shim, which is the bootloader that all Linux distributions use, that's signed by secure boot. That shim then switches to grub loads the kernel, right? So shim is trusted by secure boot, signed by a Microsoft CA. Shim loads grub in a vulnerable IGEL signed kernel. Vulnerable kernel allows mounting and running unverified root file systems. Then you can use kexec to replace the running kernel with an entirely untrusted one, and it'll pass all secure boot trust, which it's pretty wild. So you could build like a USB bootable thing that would bypass secure boot. Someone's UPS is beeping. But yeah. So the other interesting things, one of the modules in the second one I talked about, the one that binarily found was DT Research was the one that made that software and signed it with the certificate, which is normally signing shim, but they signed it this other piece of software with it. The patch Microsoft released Tuesday adds 14 separate variants of the DT Research tool to a block list stored in the DBX. So interesting Microsoft chose to update the DBX in this case and not SBAT when they communicated earlier this year that they would be updating SBAT, which is 2 different ways to invoke a revocation list for secure boot.
So I remember we talked about that, like when they announced that, and there was a reason, right? And if I remember right, like it's been like and I'm not the expert, Paul, you are here, but if I remember right, the SBAT didn't doing it the way that the what you call the DBX, right?
Yeah,
that has a limited space, right?
32 kilobytes typically. Yeah.
I mean that's a real issue, and that's why they came out stating that they were going to do it the other way, right?
Right. They were going to use it's like secure boot advanced targeting or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm maybe a little off on the acronym, but it allows for a more flexible way to invalidate software in secure boot. And so interesting how Microsoft's like, oh, we're just going to update the DBX. I'm like, what, did you flip a coin when this kind of stuff happens?
Yeah.
Like, one side's DBX, one side's SBAT. Someone in the Microsoft office is flipping a coin.
Yeah.
At least it didn't land on the edge and they updated both.
Right.
Well, more than likely,
But
that's probably what it probably wasn't a coin flip, but it probably is which engineer made the decision on that. And one wants to go,
Could be.
like you're probably not too far
Right.
off, to be honest.
So Microsoft essentially fixed that one. But the other one with the IGEL thing that was signed, Microsoft received no indication the company has plans to revoke the signature. Yeah. So Microsoft isn't revoking that one. That was the premise of the Dan Gooden article, my story number 18. Microsoft only patch is kind of a wrong word.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft remediated one of them with revocation, but did not for the other one. And my coworker told me that IGEL OS 10 is end of life. And so that's the reason why, like in IGEL, they're not, you can, depending on where in the Linux kernel, like shim trusts grub because shim has its own certificates that validate grub independent of secure boot, which I believe is true. There's some other validation there. So they could revoke it in that, but they haven't. Or it's a mock list, I'm not sure. But in any case, that one's still floating out there. Which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Are we done with the UEFI yet? Oh, no.
One more.
Sorry.
One more. Sorry if we're boring you, Jeff. Some
I've been
people actually find
daydreaming.
this
It's
interesting.
okay. It's a beautiful
He's been
year.
daydreaming about PCI and
Right?
That's
the
right.
pit. It's okay.
Where is the chat GPT? You had this story.
24,
Larry.
Oh,
the one to
geez.
disable secure boot.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
So this one's interesting. So they used chat. Well, so I got to read the whole thing. So a PC enthusiast known as Desk Modder, which I don't know why that's important in the story, but it is, used ChatGPT.
So what ChatGPT told you was important about the story.
Right. It's Perplexity. I have the AIs just work with each other. So they use ChatGPT and a BIOS programmer, CH341A, in case you're wondering, Jeff. It's important, CH341A, to bypass factory reset protection and secure boot in a Panasonic ToughPad, originally locked with Android 6.0 and FRP. The device was considered tamper-proof, but
Not to go off on a tangent, but I was at a antique shop yesterday, and they had a Panasonic 8-track player, and almost bought it. Except for I got rid of my 8-tracks like 2 years ago.
For those of you who don't know what an 8-track player is,
Google it.
because you're too young.
it's like a cassette but bigger. And if you don't know what a cassette is, it's that thing that came before CDs. And if you don't know what CDs are,
That's what came
need to
before
go do some
DVDs.
research on the
Jeff,
internet.
that was a really bad move because we all know that technology is cyclical.
Here we go around.
so where was
8-tracks
I?
come back.
Oh.
I'm done. I'm done with
But
technology.
I hated
Come back,
8-tracks.
okay?
They sucked.
Yeah, so this is Panasonic's like tough pad line, like rugged line of compute. But so what the person did was dump the BIOS using a programmer, right? So physically dumping it from the SPI flash, uploaded the BIOS image to ChatGPT and said like, hey, how do I modify this so I can disable secure boot? ChatGPT told him how to do that. I believe using like an AMI tool to modify the BIOS. Is what I gathered, and then put the BIOS, reflash the BIOS, probably with the SPI flash programmer, and then was able to bypass secure boot. Now I had driver issues after that. However, what I thought most interesting about this not to pick on Panasonic because others do it too, is Intel's boot guard and BIOS guard are two technologies that could like 100% prevent, well, maybe not 100%, 99%. They're intended to prevent exactly this type of attack, right? Like that's why Intel came up with these technologies that use yet a different root of trust to verify the image so that you can't go modify your UEFI image. We don't want attackers modifying UEFI image. If anyone could modify it, you could disable protections. So there's protections to protect the protections.
Who's watching the watchers?
That manufacturers sometimes don't enable. We found that.
So Paul, I'm mildly interested in this actually, and I have a question.
The compiler compiling compilers?
Did ChatGPT actually come up with a clever way of doing this?
Yeah, did
or
you
did
read
it just
this?
sort of
Did you read
recommend
his?
what everybody would have done?
Yeah, you can read the ChatGPT chat. He actually published the link.
No, I don't.
The
I don't
action
read
plan to
ChatGPT.
disable secure boot from his
I can help it.
chat. That's pretty fascinating. And the key finding. Did you look at that, Paul?
My
So
question
yeah,
is,
I mean-
did ChatGPT actually come up with this, or did it just recommend sort of a standard?
It helped.
approach?
It saved them. It saved the person research.
Okay.
Right. That's it's known how to do this, but it would have been a lot of work to research it and try and figure it out. ChatGPT was able to kind of look at all the research that was out there and make a recommendation.
Okay, so it sped up the way to do this is out there.
Correct.
It
If I'm
collated
hearing
the
you.
research effectively.
Gotcha.
Jeff.
Mhm.
Okay. Gotcha.
Told them what tools to use. You know.
I'm
okay.
sold. I'm going to start using ChatGPT now.
There you go.
You know, one thing to call out, this was, what was it, Android 6.0, right? Like, so when we start talking about, you know, that we have these protections to protect the protections and those kind of things, I expect, and again, I don't know this, but I expect that those have greatly matured since we were having Android 6.0 type devices, right? So, I mean, I don't know what year this device came out, but it certainly feels like a legacy device to me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I'm not taking away. I actually, you know, like, I think it's amazing that AI is able to take a look at a firmware binary image and tell you how to edit it to bypass detections. Or protections. I think that's amazing. I just imagine crossing your fingers after you flash that ROM, and man, is this thing going to boot? And it boots. Can you imagine? Like,
I know.
Can you imagine?
It boots the first time.
Can you?
Usually it doesn't.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. You couldn't really screw things up. I mean, if you really want to screw things up, you need a Flash programmer.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, you know, that's what it was on an old device. He's like, man, let's just give it a shot. Like, I love
YOLO,
it. Yeah,
right?
Like, what happens if it doesn't work? I'll go sell it to Jeff at the antique shop.
Well, if it didn't work, theoretically, the person could have
reflashed,
reflashed it, and if the spy flash chip is really borked, you can actually replace it, right? You can desolder it and solder on a new one.
Yep.
And then flash that one.
I was going to say
that was my
did that
thought
for work. I did. I almost did that for work this week. Very similar. I had to dump SPI flash off a device and did it off board, got it dumped, and successfully managed to put it back, and the device works still.
Holy crap.
I know.
It's like voodoo magic.
Yeah.
Spy flash
Well,
stuff.
the thing is, why is his coworker laughing? Because Larry doesn't know he switched devices on him.
Oh, that's evil.
Nice.
Hey, come on. You got to go for the Princess Bride references.
Just if you're going to try this at home, some advice from Eclipsium's research team told me this. They're like, anytime you're pulling a spy flash image off, pull off at least 3 copies and then hash them and compare them.
Oh, interesting.
To make sure that it transferred right.
Yeah.
If you get all different ones, something's not right, one of your connections is loose, or it's not getting a good connection. So
good point.
That's called experience right there. That's
right. That's people that have been doing that for
Pro
a long
tip.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And experiences, we screwed up a lot, and now we finally figured it out.
Yeah.
Well,
we
getting
followed
something
the
to
playbook
work
we
is
wrote.
also finding out all the ways that it doesn't work first, right? Like, I mean, you have to try all those ways.
Oh, yes.
Something about
So many
Edison
ways.
and a light bulb being right once. Something.
Yeah.
So, Mandy, you wanted to talk about the Pixel 6. Because I have a Pixel 6, and it's actually one of my son's phones right now. And so I can't mess with it because it's his actual
Whoa,
phone.
whoa, whoa!
Oh.
Your son has more than one phone?
No, well, he had multiple phones
Uh-oh.
until his old Apple phone just died. iPhone just died. And I'm like, I'm not figuring out how to fix this anymore. I'm like, you want an Android phone? He's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, you can use this till you're old enough to, want an iPhone right now.
You can use this until you're old enough to realize that it sucks.
Yes, exactly. To realize that Android is not cool and you're not now he's the cool kid. He's probably one of the only kid in his school with a phone.
Was it Pixel?
But in
Really?
any
What do you
case-
mean? He's one of the only ones with a Pixel?
No,
With
the
a-
only
with
one
a
with a
phone.
phone.
I'm sorry.
Period.
Is he very young?
Oh, is
He's
this
still
your
an
younger
element.
kid or
He's
your older kid?
Yeah, he's still an
Okay,
element.
that's
I know. I was like, wait a minute.
And he
So your
has,
young-
and he has a
driving?
phone.
Okay.
And it was cheaper for me to add another SIM card. I mean, I didn't want to get into all this, but you're forcing my hand. It was cheaper for me to add another SIM card than not. So I added, and I've talked to multiple people, and I'm like, am I crazy? And they're like, no, I did the same thing. So I had like an extra. They don't give you
Your
it's like
craziness
an eSIM now.
is totally different from anything you've done.
Yeah,
But yeah, you're not supposed to get your kid in elementary school a phone. This the
No.
whole wait until 8 thing. They're supposed to be
Yeah.
only get a phone in 8th or 9th grade.
yeah. Well,
Have
Anyway.
you met Paul Asadorian?
anyway, he's got a Pixel 6 with a
This
SIM
is
card.
cool. I mean, it's not like it's. I mean, it's kind of neat. It works, I'm sure, and I'm sure he doesn't have any issues with it, except
Yeah. So, but my point to that story was, I want to be able to root my Pixel 6, but now it's essentially in production.
Why?
Because someone figured out how to get an exploit working on it. So this was the Mali GPU exploit, very famous exploit for Pixel 7 8 devices. And this person made it work on a Pixel 6 Pro. It goes into laborious detail as to how we got the exploit working.
Which it's saying the Pixel 6 Pro used a different Mali GPU from the Pixel 7 and 8.
Yeah, so you had to modify the code. So if you were to take this person's code, I asked Perplexity, and I don't know if it's hallucinating or not. I'm like, so can I use this exploit to root my Pixel 6? And it was like, yeah, with a little bit of work, it looks like it's possible.
Great. Please do that work for me.
Yeah, go make the exploit work with my phone. Yes, please.
we could send Paul to eBay and he could buy a Pixel 6 Pro for about $200.
Oh, man.
Well,
Yeah,
I
'cause
only
I
want
bought
to because
one
I
for
had one later. Right? Yeah.
140.
Well, you put it into production.
Well,
Yeah.
Mandy has one. Mandy has one that she wants to root. Am I
Well,
correct?
yes, but technically Mandy does not have it because Mandy returned it because I couldn't. So I purchased it on
Because you
eBay.
couldn't root it.
Huh?
Because you couldn't root it, you took it back.
Basically, I was just like, well, plus it became that, and it lied on the ad because it was supposed to have been the global edition and it wasn't. It was a Verizon locked, and I got sick and tired of trying to
Yeah,
deal with the
and you can't
Verizon
unlock-
stuff.
You can't unlock it. Yeah, you can't unlock
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I was super frustrated when I figured out that I could not unlock it.
And that is why I gave up and returned it and figured I would get a different device at another time. But I had did also want to root
Also,
it.
really grinds my gears that there's technology on there that you can't.
Oh, it's
unlock.
ridiculous.
I know.
Like, why?
Me
Why
too.
is this?
No,
why?
it's
Why?
disgusting.
It's it's awful, awful. But now we have an exploit, so I mean, you have to back rev the software, which could be challenging because Google doesn't like to let you back rev. So I'm not sure how you do that. Actually, I think it's possible if you go to back rev it, and then you have to make the exploit work for the slightly different GPU that is in there, and then it also says you have to make it work like in your environment. So like for whatever Android environment you have, there could be differences in how that. So I don't know how much work that would be, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just go find another phone to unlock that comes unlocked.
Yeah. You're supposed to be able to buy Androids unlocked out the gate. You just don't buy them.
Well, clearly Mandy tried, and someone pulled a fast one and
Yeah, I know.
sent her a not unlocked.
What a jerk.
Verizon
Exactly.
lock.
And I was like, literally, it's stated on this. Like I had checked 400 listings to make sure and or at least 50. Let's say at least 50 listings to make sure I was getting it right. And
So it was 2. All right, it was 2 listings.
so it's the first one I saw, and
Final
it
answer.
failed.
Listen, okay, so it was the first one that I looked, but it clearly said.
I looked, I sorted by price, low to high, cheapest one, and that was what I did.
Well, in Mandy's defense, I mean, I'm looking at this listing from eBay of Pixel 6s, and several of them say unlocked. And the one that makes me absolutely positive it's unlocked is the one that's brand new in a box. How old a Pixel 6 that's unlocked? I'm like, really?
Well, they're on, what do I have now? A
Now we're
9?
on
My
9.
money.
They just released 9A.
Yeah.
On a similar vein about the Mandy getting scammed on eBay for not an actual unlockable phone, I found out today that I recently bought a new to me 16-inch MacBook Pro Intel.
Yeah.
That I bought it from a scammer.
What?
What?
Yeah.
How'd you find out?
So I was
Scammer like
get it.
scammed you, or the scammer scammed to get the laptop
Is
and
it
then sold it?
scammer that apparently scams other people on eBay with misleading eBay listings.
And so, did you get the actual laptop?
I got the actual laptop that I wanted, and so the big deal. This guy was on YouTube talking about doing some discovery about these guys or these companies that sell used refurbished MacBooks on eBay, and he says you can usually tell the same company because the images get reused. There's also things in it that don't make sense, like turbo in the processor listing, and
Wait, Macs don't come with a turbo button
No.
like 46.
No.
and some other sort of shady practices, like 2 terabytes of disk, but they don't tell you that it's spinning. In some of the older refurb ones, and like in those cases, they're like charging 3 times the price. Like instead of $100, it's $300, but you're buying it from a quote reputable seller. And the reputable seller, basically, what happens is that they game the system. That they put an item up and it's a charger, and they list like 30 chargers, and people buy like 70 of these chargers. Then after they've sold a bunch of the chargers, they go and completely edit the listing to be a MacBook, but it still retains the 7 people have purchased.
Right.
Oh.
In very similar, and very similar vein, I bought this one, and it was reasonably priced, and it was one of the very few that was out there that had all the specs that I wanted. Like, it's apparently a unicorn. I
was just thinking, can't eBay have a thing that...
Well, they have an edit history, but you've got to go and look at the edit history for something like that.
I was going to say they do have an edit history, but you have to go look at it.
Yeah, and
that's how they figured it out. Because
same case in point that I went back and I'm like, this imagery looks familiar from the story, and I went and looked up, but it wasn't one of the companies that he listed that tied to a bunch of stuff. So basically, what they're doing too is it's like 2 companies that sell refurb Macs, but they each have like 3 or 4 different eBay accounts. And you start doing the sleuthing, and they all go back to these 2 different addresses, and some have been shut down, so they've changed a little bit. But like 60% of all of the used MacBook sales on eBay are 2 companies, despite the fact that there's like 30 different companies that are actually selling.
Yeah, it's all the same.
It's all the same.
I think what you should do is you should, report that you've never received this laptop, since you're already buying from a scammer anyway, right? Like,
I mean, and
Bill's advice is to scam the scammer.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
I would expect that's classic Bill advice.
That's right.
Classic Bill.
So
hashtag classic Bill.
Similar type of thing that happened with this one is that I went and I'm like, man, this has the feel of that. And sure enough, I went back to the listing, and it says right in the one that I purchased, it had that turbo phrase in it. And I'm like, well, but it was still the laptop that I knew that I was getting, and at the age and all this type of stuff. But I went and clicked on the listing to see the original listing, and it says it was listed for $900 over what I paid for it. Like, they just reused the listing. Like, we have multiple of these, and now they're selling for $1,900 a piece.
Wow.
Jesus.
For a 5-year-old MacBook.
You scrubbed that laptop when you got it, I'm sure.
It's shiny.
Well,
He put it through the dishwasher, okay?
and I didn't scrub it, but I
Factory reset.
No, I reloaded it from my backup.
Oh, okay.
So it
I have an
effectively got
11-year-old MacBook that I'll sell to you for $3,500.
What a bargain!
Right.
What a bargain! Is it Intel? Like, is that? Yeah, they're going.
You know, for that money, you can get a framework and put Linux on it. It's great.
Act now, Larry, before the price goes
just
up.
saying.
That's what I'm going for.
Arch
Do
Linux
you
runs great
understand
on
why
it.
I'm trying to sell the MacBook?
Actually, can I get a framework? Are they actually available?
I'm not sure currently because we're not endorsed by Framework in any shape, form, or fashion. However, I have 2 Framework laptops and I am in love with them.
Fanboy.
And they're amazing hardware, amazing platform, and they run Linux great.
I have a
Same.
unique Mac-like device for you, Larry.
Oh, is that an EEPC?
Oh my God, I have one of those.
That is
Wow.
It's
That
in a
is
Move my hand, you can
vintage.
see. Yes, it's
Is that a
yeah.
that's an
Ultra
it's an
book or
what did we
something
used to
like
call
that.
those?
Ultra
netbooks?
Netbook? Is that a netbook?
Yes.
it's an Atom.
Yeah.
Yep. Atom netbook.
Single core Atom, most of those suckers were.
Yeah.
I have one. It's in a disused
know-
lavatory with a sign on the door that says "Beware of leopards."
Yeah, I think if I started it to boot, it'd be done by the end of the show.
Yeah.
You're really
Yeah.
pushing it there, dude.
I mean, we're running talk about a real current OS. And you see where it says Windows 7 on there? Probably
Okay.
not. It's probably blurry. But anyway, yes, Windows
Eternal blue, waiting
Exactly.
for
We
you.
go. And here we go. Old farts talking about old computers.
7. Well,
Yeah, let's talk about cameras on the internet.
Yeah.
40,000 cameras expose feeds to data centers and health clinics. Now, look, we all know this is nothing new. We've known pretty much since we first all discovered the internet. One of the things we're able to do is go hit an IP address or domain, or usually an IP address, get a camera and go, hey, look, cool. It's like a parking lot somewhere.
So it was like kind of, if you remember, you're right, Paul. It was kind of the first like Google dorks back in the day, where like how to find cameras, right? That was way back in the day. And then Shodan came out and made it super easy.
super easy to find cameras. Now, a lot of those cameras are vulnerable, and there's a lot of dorks out there to find vulnerable cameras.
Yeah.
But so BitSite, which is BitSite is third party risk company. The reason I said is that made sense in the context of this article, that they were able to like scan the internet and kind of parse what's out there. Right, it's one of the things those companies do. So they found 40,000 cameras on the internet, which seems maybe low in my estimation, but they said 14,000 were in the U.S.
I feel like that's probably right? Like, I don't think that's low.
Yeah. I wonder if it needed to be password protected, if that still counted or not, or if 40,000 is like you don't need a password.
Right, yeah.
And then the next category would be like default username and password. And the next category is like, you got to brute force the password or find an exploit for it. So my guess is that 40,000 are, you go to the in a browser and the camera feed just pops up kind of thing. They also checked RTSP as well.
Well, I think if they're responding with RTSP, then that would count as a camera in my mind, right? Boom, done. Right.
Yeah, done. Like, I don't think is there authentication on RTSP? I think
you can.
You
can.
Yeah. Yes.
But I don't think a lot of time they do, but yeah.
Correct. So 14,000 were in the US. DHS warned that the feeds could be exploited for espionage, notably by Chinese actors, mapping security blind spots, stealing trade secrets, or aiding criminals in robberies and stalking. Does everyone agree with that? Does that track?
Well,
Wait,
so
in your
minds?
Say that again, please.
So DHS warned that these exposed camera feeds could be exploited for espionage, notably by Chinese actors, mapping security blind spots, stealing trade secrets, or aiding criminals in robberies and stalking.
So I'll tell you
Why
what I
wouldn't
think.
that
I
work?
think that if you were to say what is the worst case scenario for having a camera posted, those
It would be
things,
that.
those would be those things, right? Like,
Toilet cameras.
yeah. Well, okay, yeah. So
Well,
it gets
they're
worse,
for
right?
research
It gets,
purposes.
Yeah, it gets worse, I guess, when you start thinking about it. But like, I think that realistically, I don't think that it's really going to end in that. You might find a Wi-Fi password on a whiteboard, right? Or a sticky note or something.
Yeah, I've been there in like really rare circumstances, right?
But
I don't
here's
know
the
that I
thing.
actually got a password, but I was definitely, it was a Polycom device on a pen test. And I
Well,
could
so a pen
definitely
test
see
is
the
a-
table. I could
yeah.
see the table and the whiteboard. So if there was information, and I had lurked for a while, but as we know, pen tests have a limited lifespan.
So if you have cameras cameras are typically put out there to watch important areas or watch bottlenecks where you
Yep.
can find the people going through. So if you have access to the cameras of an entire casino, for example, and remember, if you look at a casino, there's a camera bubble like every 6 feet on the ceiling, right? And typically only 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 of those bubbles is occupied by a camera. Those suckers aren't cheap. They want you to think you're constantly under surveillance, and you are, but it's not quite as extensive as they want you to think. So if you can find out where the blind spots are, as a matter of fact, I was at one casino where the head of surveillance moved into the regular casino, like it became a manager of another division. They had the cherry picker bucket truck things out there the next day, moving the cameras, changing the angle, moving to another bubble, whatever, just so that he wouldn't know where they were. And like it's done just to make sure that you don't know where the blind spots are. Just learning the blind spots in the casino is $1 million a month. Okay, because you can steal so friggin' much. Now, in terms of IoT cameras,
Wait, steal by, you mean like gaming the system and gambling kind of thing?
well, because
Camera
they
or
can't watch
actual
you-
theft, like I'm stealing something?
Oh no, gaming the system, actual theft. If you know
All
which
of the
slot
above.
machines aren't being watched, you can steal tickets from slot machines that aren't being watched. If you know which blackjack tables with 3 decks or 2 decks or 4 decks aren't being watched, you can card count at them all day until the dealer goes, okay, stop. But if you're good enough, the dealer's never going to say stop. So it's interesting.
So I think that like if we're going to be talking about like a shotgun approach, like let's take like an overarching. There are 40,000 cameras. The real risk is not that, right? That the
Right.
real risk is that these cameras generally have poor security. They could be used as your way into the network. That you pivot off of that and go into the network. However, if you were after a specific target, right? Like, you're doing your research and you're looking at the, what the external exposure kind of looks like, and you find a camera that probably would be helpful in your specific targeting of that company somehow, whether if you were planning a physical attack or something like
Absolutely.
that, right?
Like I absolutely
Yeah.
think that it would be useful. I think you might have to search through a lot and you're going to see a lot of crap, but
Yeah, but I mean, like, think about it. Like, if
Well-
so I agree it could, but like, I mean, a lot of times these are like, and I agree with Josh, right? So, like, most of the times they are, they're choke points, they're, like important areas, but they're also sometimes, the parking lot.
Stupid. So, yeah, they're stupid. I mean,
Or
you remember
or the
Viss's
street,
You remember
like-
Viss's camera comparer or whatever you call it, Camera Wars?
Oh,
Where
yeah.
He'd put up 2 random cameras across the internet. You pick which one was more interesting.
Oh yeah, man.
But also it says in the summary of the article, there's evidence that cyber criminals are actively sharing access to these feeds on forums, sometimes for extortion or stalking. So, Bill, kind of like to your point, yeah, there's a lot of cameras, but threat actors are paying attention and going, well, this one's kind of interesting.
Well, it's
Could
probably
we use
for that
this
one that
for
Josh just says, like that toilet cam
targeting?
or whatever,
Yeah.
or the one in the medical facility. They're
Right,
Like,
yeah.
nobody wants them to know that they have cancer.
Right. I mean, like,
So-
Let's
actually,
make
you're
that on
right.
the internet.
It's because of the sites like where you the cam wars, and you say which one's more interesting, and then we would share those. Hey, here out of those 40,000, here's the 100 that are weird or wild or whatever.
But also, the last comment here was DHS is especially worried about Chinese-made cameras in critical sectors like energy and chemicals, as they often lack proper security controls. That's kind of where my brain was going. To give DHS props here,
For sure.
I was like, wait, if you've got a camera and it's exposed to the internet, no authentication, what are the chances that you're not applying firmware updates to that? And if you're not, is there an exploit, a vulnerability and associated exploit where I can go, I don't care what the camera feed is. I know you've got a camera. It's it's on your network somewhere, or maybe adjacent to your network. If I compromise that camera, what else can I get to from it?
So I don't remember the specific vendor, but this has been found. We have found Chinese implanted backdoors in prosumer grade.
Is this
cameras.
Hikvision?
Yeah, Hikvision.
It's
Hikvision. That's right.
I never know how to
Larry.
pronounce that. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they
Hikvision is a Chinese manufactured cameras,
right? And they made it on the the U.S. government do not deploy list, right? Because of that, right? And then we look through and we being not me, we being researchers or
the community,
the community, we found other cameras that may not have had purposely implanted backdoors, just terrible security, right?
Yeah, it's almost like the same thing. We've covered stories like this, right? I've talked about this in some of my presentations. Sometimes we think it's a backdoor, and maybe it is, but other times we think it's a backdoor, but it's just terrible security.
Yeah,
like the patient monitor system, that really wasn't a backdoor. It was just terrible security. We talked about it with solar panels, right? Is that really a backdoor, or is it just friggin' terrible security?
Well,
or
so that
features
solar
that aren't
panel
used
thing,
yet,
man,
right?
like, and I wasn't a part of that conversation, but that had a radio, an undocumented cellular
radio. Yeah.
Yeah, but also the thermostats.
No, it was documented. It was documented that there was a cell radio in there. It's just nobody looks at the freaking schematics because it wasn't supposed to be used by the consumer or the installer. It was supposed to be used by the manufacturer to turn it off. Remember, also Nest thermostats had a Zigbee radio. Yep.
But that wasn't being used. It was there just for future
future
things.
Yeah.
But you go to a camera though, a camera's like usually terrible security.
Yeah.
And the difference between a backdoor and just a heinous vulnerability is you're kind of like it's like whatever.
Well,
Like it might as well be a backdoor because it's so friggin' wide open with a million vulnerabilities that anyone could backdoor it after the fact anyway. So
we used to call those features, Paul.
Yeah, it's a feature. A backdoor is a feature. That's great. I want a T-shirt. Backdoors are features. That's great. That's great.
Your
Jeff.
wife
I love
might not want to wear it, but anyway.
That's very true.
Moving right along.
We had to get there.
I didn't really want that kind of feature. I didn't want that kind of feature, Josh.
What's the law? Never ascribe to malevolence when stupidity will do just fine. Is it Hanlon's law?
Yes.
I forget.
Yeah. We need to morph that for like malicious backdoors versus just negligence on vulnerabilities. There's a parallel there.
Yeah, there is.
Wait, I want to go to some of Lee's
That might be a
stories.
good. That might be
segue into PCI. Let's talk about PCI.
Segue into your.
Speaking of negligence,
what number was your story where the guy was got a root shell on a card reader?
Oh,
5.
yeah.
Number 5.
This was
Your story number
That's
5.
a great
really
story.
cool. I mean, this is just like an example of really awesome research. Like
It was an almost really good story, but go ahead. I want to hear your take on it.
So this person decided to reverse engineer a payment card terminal because it seemed interesting. And like, I love this is the spirit of this article. Like, I got this thing and I just want to take it apart. And largely, like, I save stuff like this, and like, if we don't get to it on the show, it's like in my. I need to create a more formal way to save stuff. Like, if I'm going to reverse engineer something and I want like examples, this is the kind of post that I would want in my archive, right? Because it's got this picture right here, right? Is a perfect example of the kind of stuff I want. So here's the board, right? Here's the PCB, and he's labeled everything for you. Now, the people that I work with, one of the things I love is that when we are on a meeting and we bring up a PCB like this, that everyone kind of nerds out. It's like porn. And they're all like, like zoom in on that. Oh, that's the flash ROM chip. That's the RAM. And that could be a UART header, right? Like, it's super exciting for everyone, right? It's like nerd porn.
Chip.
Dude, it's so.
There it is.
And that's what he's doing right here. Like, to me, this is porn, right?
This
like,
is the centerfold.
amazing.
This is the centerfold of this one.
This is the centerfold. We've expanded the centerfold, and I'm like, for those that don't know, we use porn used to be in magazine. Anyway.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
Before
man.
Pornhub,
You're really making me feel old here.
there was VHS tapes and magazines. Okay.
You'd find the stash of them out in the woods or something. Yeah.
Yes.
And scrambled cable.
Right.
Yeah.
I
In
think
any
that
case,
was a boob.
yeah.
Haboob?
Hey, that's a sandstorm.
So yeah. So there was tamper protections on this.
There
looking
were
for
tamper protections, and he triggered it.
Yep. And you can see that here as well.
This is actually a really well written article. I enjoyed reading
It is a
this.
really well.
Yeah, dude, it's
well-
pretty awesome.
Although I totally cringe. Like they've got PC bytes, and they did this bastardization to the
Yes.
BGA chip to get. I'm like, oh my god!
Oh, so what do you say? This
I didn't
is
say
a
that the
bastardization
content-
right here.
They make about a $30 reader that you put this thing in, and it plugs in via USB and shows up as a drive.
Is that
like-
a BGA flash chip?
Yeah.
So you can get a BGA flash chip reader like
Yep. I have several.
Instead, he
Celia
soldered every
Celia
leg.
Logic or whatever.
Yeah,
no,
it's-
not Celia Logic.
no.
What's the other company that makes the flash reader that's really good?
Uh,
Begins with an S. I had a mental blank.
Yep. Me too.
You and I have used them before. We've in the studio. We've desoldered something and put it on a reader.
Seeger J-Link.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch.
There's a whole bunch. Yeah.
And the irony is, I took it out of the drawer yesterday, and I still can't
Yeah.
remember what. Yeah. In any case, like, oh god, like So what happened with the tamper protection stuff?
But these posts right here, is that from a PC Byte
Those are
kit?
PC bytes. Yeah,
That's a PC. That's
yep.
part of the PC Byte kit that you get.
Yep.
Which PC
And if you
Bytes
scroll-
are like,
And if you scroll down a little bit more,
oh, there's
the
PC Bytes. Yeah.
Like,
So they did use PC Bytes to, what is that? Oh, probing the debug connector.
yep.
So it was like a JTAG-ish interface, but it's not JTAG.
Nope. It was serial.
Oh, okay. So it's yeah.
Yeah, serial UART. Samoa login root enter. What?
Oh, that's beautiful. So what is there not to like about this post, Jeff? There's pictures, like there's nerd porn. There's a root prompt that like it's checking all the boxes
There's
for me of being
soldering,
an
there's
amazing
We have
Sorry.
post.
zero password root prompt.
Wait, what is this?
Right? A zero password
Which is
root
why
prompt.
you're disappointing me, Paul.
But it's okay that there's a zero.
Oh, and there's memes. I mean, there's custom memes. Like that's like a bonus. That's not even on my original checklist to be an awesome post.
And-
like memes is like bonus points.
And-
Like,
and
now
the-
you're off the chart.
and this meme
you're a
sinks it.
12 out of 10 on my scale. of
This meme sinks it. I'm like, why? Who cares if there's a root prompt
I love
on
how
the serial
Jeff is
console
just
without a
sitting
password?
back and, like,
Because you've
just,
got
like-
tamper detection. You've got tamper detection,
We got
right?
root, we got memes, we got PC bytes. Like this
Oh
is a
my God.
fucking
I
amazing
have a
post.
question
Okay?
on.
But
Did
we
you
got
steal-
handwritten notes.
But did you steal
Handwritten
credit
notes.
cards? Did you steal credit cards? Because
Not
this
yet.
is, at the end of the day, a credit card reader.
Mandy, you had a question
Yes,
in
I
there?
do.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Mandy. Everybody talk, and then I'll give my spin on
Oh,
it.
I know, but I see where Jeff is going. So the conclusion states, while still being a huge unnecessary attack surface and a massive oversight from engineers, in my opinion, I could not find any evidence that sensitive data, such as credit card details, could become compromised this way. Is that what? I think that's the sentence you're honing in on, Jeff. And I don't
I'll
blame you
keep
for that.
talking, and I'll give you my summary when.
Okay.
when
Well, I'm
that's my turn.
I'm done talking.
And-
Yeah,
and-
mine's
got
very-
excited
Yeah.
for a question.
Yeah.
a particular thing about signal integrity. So he says when he reattached the flash chip using wires, he ignored everything he knew about signal integrity, and to his surprise, it still booted up. What part of that would have interrupted the signal integrity and reattaching using the wires?
So he did so by adding additional length to
Okay.
the circuit. So by adding those wires that weren't either shielded or routed
Okay.
properly next to other electrical signals, and so
You
like power
introduced,
next to data lines.
That's what I was kind
and,
of
yeah,
thinking.
also-
Interference
Didn't know if it was
and
actual reason.
Dogs sleeping with
can-
cats.
Yeah.
It just goes down.
basically resistance
Or interference.
and interference and
Length.
reduce the conductiveness
right.
of the cables.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I love the disclosure timeline. So
Oh, I love the
11:14 discovered, 11:15 informed, 11:18 manufacturer confirms, and oh wait, like a year later, I forgot this project existed.
in that publication. I love it. It's the best disclosure timeline ever. Oh, I hope this person reaches out. The person that did the printer hack that we talked about with the UV printer,
Yeah.
reached
Yes.
out. and I owe you a response. And I don't remember your name, but I do have your email, and I have it flagged to follow up. So at some point, maybe we'll do like a special show. We bring on
That'd be
like
sweet.
a couple of different people that like we talked about their research, and we gave it accolades on the show, and then like they contacted us some way. And we'll bring you on the show or something, because
that's almost like an infrequent segment, recurring segment. Topic idea,
because it doesn't always have. I mean, we talk about a lot of research on the show, and occasionally whoever did the research catches wind that we talked about it.
It's usually because Mandy emails them.
Because I talked to them. Like, what were you doing and why? What's this? What is going on? How did you do that? That's amazing.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So is it my turn yet?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. So your take on this?
Oh, I forgot we were going to let Jeff talk.
Yeah, sit back, Paul. This is, Bill. Yeah. It won't be as long as all those fucking UEFI articles.
What is wrong? Oh, damn!
And Jeff has burned
the next PCI revision is going to add UEFI, and then you're going to be like, "Fuck! I have to pay attention to this shit now."
Paul attempts a counter
and when it happens, I will pay attention.
Oh my god!
So
meanwhile, we're all learning what it looks like when Jeff goes off his meds.
St. Louis has changed him. St. Louis did something, Jeff.
Holy shit!
Oh, and Jeff is back on his meds.
Sarcasm pills. Nice.
I'm on my meds.
Jeff drinks because you UEFI. Now that we derailed Jeff, it's time to move on.
I need to come up with a proper euphemism.
God. I want my brain cells back. You guys.
Oh my god! I can't wait to clip that for the show.
Paul, it's 7:00. Have you? Do you know where all your euphies are?
Euphemisms.
How do I? There's a button I can push to clip. Oh, mark. I'm going to mark it right here.
I think somebody UEFI Jeff's bourbon.
Okay. I'll make it.
Okay.
So this is a card reader. This is a major component of payment transactions. So it's obviously PCI related. PCI Council actually has several programs in place to certify these types of devices. So as soon as I'm reading the article, I'm looking up to see if it's, because it said something about it's apparently discontinued. I don't think it's discontinued. Maybe this version is, but this device, in terms of the product and the name, which escapes me right now, it's a listed device, and I'm looking for, okay, what's it doing? And most of these types of devices these days, they have some form of encryption on them, so that as soon as you're dipping or tapping your card, the data is getting encrypted using embedded cryptography with embedded keys, and that the retailers, the merchants, can't have access to. And this is revolutionary in the PCI world, because it takes most of the PCI standard off the plate for most merchants, because they don't.
Wait, Jeff, are you saying, Jeff? I'm sorry, I just have a question. So
please,
the encryption, the public key theoretically could be fused on the board. Whoever's processing the credit card transaction has the private key, and therefore you can preserve that transaction and send it encrypted.
Absolutely,
basically. Okay,
no, not even close. But I don't want to belabor the details of how the encryption works. But he talked about, he rooted this one processor that's apparently responsible for the device being online and networking. But there's a second processor that he said was appropriately encrypted and protected that he didn't do anything with. I would love to get in touch with this guy and say, stop. Go back and start going after that second processor, because that's where I'm interested. Because if he could get to that processor, I am more than convinced, given my background, nudge nudge wink wink, that the cryptography is not sound. It's not DoD government standard.
It's not like a TPM. There's no TPM equivalent on the board or anything fancy like that, because it's a card reader, right?
And what's chilling for me is, because when we were designing systems back, in the 1900s, one of the premises of protecting the security of a device that was being designed, or a system that was being designed, was you assume that the bad guy, the adversary, has gotten a copy of it or more, has completely reverse engineered it, taken it apart, knows exactly how it works, has the instruction manual, and you still have to secure it. These devices would fall down. I'm 100% convinced if somebody could get into that second processor. And I would love to get in touch with this guy
What he
and
said
get people
was,
interested in getting into that second processor.
I may have misread because I read it quickly, but if I
Mhm.
read correctly, the first processor, that is the insecure one,
Yep.
is able to be accessed from outside the shell, which means that the tamper resistant stuff wouldn't activate. The second one is not. That's what I understood.
And so
I
and
could be
reading this
wrong.
article, to quote one of the things, my current understanding of the On My Boots process featuring the Samoa 2 ASIC, the first core insecure application always boots Linux, which in turn loads a secure bootloader and the secure image on the second core. The loader code, the secure bootloader loader code, is what displays the tamper messages screen, and the secure image that handles the card display and keypad is properly encrypted. But they're doing the loader from the insecure application side, so if you were to have that binary to reverse engineer it,
You've
It
got
is
my
very-
attention.
it's very likely that you would I'm guessing, and I'm conjecture that you'd recover keys, you'd cover encryption or decryption method, so that you could then potentially decrypt.
So
process.
I will give you a high level description of how most of these devices work. They have a seed key, so a base encryption key. Huh? That's totally distracting, Josh. Thank you. All the devices have a base encryption key. When somebody transacts, something inside that processor is taking the base key, taking some sort of unique parts of the transaction that would be known to the other side, combining with the seed key to create a key that's used for the transaction, kind of like a session key.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's secured. They call it derived unique key per transaction, or DUCPA. So me being a NSA certified cryptanalyst is like, okay, there's a seed key that's a known because we've compromised the device and we've gotten access to it, which is where I want to talk to this guy more. And what could possibly be parameters or how many different parameters or aspects of a transaction that need to be known by both sides that are obviously going to be transmitted in the clear so that you can decrypt the part where the credit card number is. That is not cryptographically sound in anybody that's a real cryptologist, cryptographer, cryptanalyst notebook. And that's why I'm intrigued by it. I would love to talk to this guy. It's like, and Larry, you've piqued my interest too. Let's get into that second chip. And does the tamper protection really ultimately protect? Has this guy found an inadvertent backdoor, which, as we know, discussed earlier, is a feature? What's sick about these systems is that seed key is not generally unique per the customer, the retailer. It's unique per
Vendor.
the series of device.
Right, yeah.
And that scares the crap out of me.
Well,
But
there's lots of ways to skin that cat, and it kind
Yeah.
of ties into one of Bill's stories.
So that's actually
hardware reverse
man,
engineering.
I was so
right?
I was so glad you threw that over to me.
You saw that
Yeah, I
segue
did,
coming,
but
didn't you?
I got to
love
tell
it. I
you,
love it.
so I had the distinct pleasure over the last 2-3 days to be hanging out with Joe Gray, and so for those of you,
Oh, man. How's Joe doing?
Oh man, he's doing great. He's such a cool guy. He came out to Set KC. He came out a little early. We got to spend some time with them and just kind of hang out. But this talk, so he talked about introducing fault injections in essentially how do we bypass things like secure boot? How do we bypass those protections that are baked into those chips by introducing faults? Sometimes you've heard this like glitching a chip, those kind of things. And and I got to tell you, so this is something that I personally have considered magic my entire hardware career. I didn't understand it. And I was exposed to it very early in like probably in the 2005 timeframe. You all might have been too. There was a big push of hacking satellite cards back in 2025 or 2005 to 2006 time period, where you would buy a glitcher and you would have a smart card and you'd buy a glitcher and the thing would glitch and then all of a sudden you were able to write to that card. That was pure magic to me. I had no idea what it was doing. I used it, and what I knew is if I bought this code and I ran this app and I knew that this card was unlocked and I could write this firmware. I understood it from that level, but I didn't understand it from an actual hacker. What is it actually doing? It purely was magic.
Yeah.
Well, Joe,
I can remember some of my acquaintances,
sure,
statute of limitations and all, actually doing voltage glitching. That like, what the hell? Why does this work?
That's what Joe
actually trying to write to the cards and was taking the cards in and out of the reader, like in and out.
I gotta tell you, so you've got to watch this, Larry.
Crazy.
So Joe gave, so I've obviously, like most of us, we've probably attended one of Joe's talks, and we also, and like most of us, we also understand that Joe is smarter than any of us, right? And he understands things at a level that, but he gives the best.
I've never had that thought, but go ahead.
Right? Yeah, that's funny. But he teaches at a 101 level voltage glitching, Larry. And so what he talked about and what I loved about this is he was like, look, we're going to read the firmware off of this protected chip. But first we have to know where do we even start? Okay, first of all, what is voltage glitching? And so he goes through what that is. Then he goes through, well, how do we even know what voltage to send? What timing do we use? But then even when do we do it? And he asked
I just want to say you described the 3 things you need to know before you start glitching. Those are 3 key.
Right.
What the voltage should be, what the interval should be, where in the process do I glitch.
That's right. And so before this talk, I didn't even know what those 3 were. Right, it was all magic to me. Right.
The only reason I know is because I interviewed Joe on Hacker Heroes, which aired I think last year on this program.
So it's
and he describes. You're right, Bill. He describes glitching better than anyone else.
It was unbelievable. Yep. And so and then he walked us through showing and he asked the audience. Okay, so he overlays some graphs. He shows you what these graphs are, and asking the audience where after he had taught us where do we start looking? What are we looking for? He's asking the audience, where do we glitch? And we nailed it. Right. Like the audience, like you'll get it, you'll understand it. And he taught it at a level that I think that if you have any, quite honestly, it's 101 level stuff. And it is.
But here's the thing, Bill, and this is in my mind, one of the fundamental principles of hacking that folks like Joe Grand and who's the other hardware guy? Travis, thank you. I don't know how you read my mind, but you did. Travis Goodspeed. They both lay this out for you. And it's a fundamental principle of hacking that you have to understand how things work and you have to build something before you can break it. So like what Travis describes is, you want to break microcontrollers? You need to go get the chip, get the code,
build something with a microcontroller.
The equivalent of the Hello World program for that and understand how it works. Yep. Then you need to start thinking about how you break it, right?
Unintended functionality comes from knowledge.
Joe has that experience, right? He deviated in his career. When I interviewed him, he talks about this. He did a Darknet Diaries too. So if you want to delve into the mind of Joe Grand, you go listen to both those interviews because they cover different ground in Joe's career. Joe deviated from cybersecurity. It was like, dude, I was building electronic stuff. Like,
and he had a TV show about it.
I was designing PCBs. He's like, that was my company. I would build electronic shit for people. And that's what I did. So it doesn't surprise me, Bill, that he's like, okay, when I go to break stuff, he has all that fundamental. He's done way more than the Hello World program, right? So he knows at a deeper level and can explain it to us. What I love about Joe is he can explain it to us now.
And so as I was watching, the video or the link that I posted, and I think it's my story. What number is it?
Number one.
Number 1. There you go. So it's the link to the most recent, the June 10th SecKC video, but I've timed it, time linked it just to Joe's part. But as he was, and this was yesterday for me, but as I was watching this Joe talk, what just kept going through my mind is like, you keep hearing about that, like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And that's what he was just teaching right there. Like that was something to me, and I'm a hardware guy too, right? But that was always something that I, quite honestly, it's been so long since I've used it. I kind of had accepted that I will never understand how that worked, right? I kind of had accepted that I will never understand. It will always be magic. And after his course yesterday, while it would certainly take a lot of work for me to do this, I at least fundamentally understand how it works. Right.
But it's great advice for those folks getting into the field that understand how something works, develop on that platform. And you may think, well, how does it make me a better hacker? Well, a lot of this stuff is interconnected and just variations on a theme.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill and Larry were like, hey, this ESP32 is really cool. I'm like, oh, I want to do some coding on that. And I learned some stuff, a very small amount of stuff. But I'm like, oh, now I understand kind of how Secure Boot works in that environment. And so when I go to an ARM platform and I read how Secure Boot works on ARM, I'm like, oh, that's not all that dissimilar to how ESP32 does it. So now we have conversations. I'm like, yeah, I sort of get that now. Whereas before, it would fall in the space of, dude, I have no idea how this works. I have no idea how this works.
Well, I think that goes back to like a couple of years ago when I was starting university. I found a program that was physics for computing. And I thought, like that's exactly precisely what I would rather know, because there's still some things that I've wanted to understand, like when you go from binary to having a font show up on a screen, like I still don't understand how. Like what is going on?
But that's what's in our brains
so
as
many
hackers.
layers.
We have to know how things work. It bugs the shit out of us if we don't know how something happened, right? And we're just having this conversation about our kids. Like when our kids pull shenanigans, we're like, no, you don't understand. Like your parents are hackers. Like we need to understand exactly what happened. The investigation has to continue until we understand what happened. You can't pull shenanigans because we're just going to unravel that. Like I got to know what happened, right? And I think that's kind of built into our DNA as hackers.
It's the puzzle.
I got to know how that happened. Fault injection is very similar to whatever else. Like I got to know how that happened.
Well, so
right?
I do want.
Like, if I don't,
I'll make you a wager.
But like I got to keep going in this world because there's so many things that I don't know how it happens that I want to know.
So shenanigans wise, I've been kind of on this kick, and I haven't really, said anything on the podcast about it. But I've been worried about the youth, right? Like, where are those young hackers at? That are doing, in the shenanigans, those kind of things. And some of them came out of the word work. So we were in a new venue last night at SecKC, and we had to be very, very careful about checking IDs and, so underage was allowed in, but they had to go through a process to be able to enter the event. And sure enough, we had some shenanigans and some youngsters were able to bypass our security, but they made the number one mistake, which I have also made myself. As soon as they bypassed our security, they told us about it and they wanted to rub it in our face that they did. Right. And I love it. Right. Like, thank you.
Yeah, but good for them. I mean, that shows some kind of ethics and more like, hey, I'm not being malicious. Right. I'm gaming the system and I want some respect. And you know what? If they came to me and said, this is how I did, I'm like, you're in, and you got respect because you disclosed it. If you disclosed how you do it,
that's ethical disclosure with a little bit of,
that's fine.
Precisely.
That's fine. I like that. I love
Bill, to your point about the youth, like a couple of things. So I thought the same thing, but I felt actually encouraged after going into a Hobby Lobby and discussing with the manager. I wanted to know like how many young people are coming in to do models? Like how many people, like how much is this happening? Because it's a similar mindset. And he said, no, actually, he goes, we've had like an uptick in younger people coming in and in model building and understanding kits and everything. I was like, okay, that's actually really encouraging to me. And then secondly, I was at Tractor Supply like last week.
Buying ducks.
My chicks, making sure I got all my chicks in a row, and kind of accosted a youth that was wearing, not physically, nothing like that, but he was wearing like, what was it? Not a Cyber Shield t-shirt. It was I don't remember what
Just like a nerd shirt.
Yeah,
or
it was a nerd
something.
shirt.
Yeah.
And so I walked up to him.
Did his shirt say I use Arch?
He
by
was
the
not
way? Or
that much
That was
of
just
a
me
dork.
last week.
He was
Yeah.
fine.
That was just you,
Yeah.
Paul.
He had personality,
wait.
Paul.
That's a whole other level.
I've got the
of
best
dork.
story.
Well, but so I started.
Hold on, let Mandy finish. Hold on,
Mandy, finish
Mandy,
yours.
then
Yeah,
Josh.
so I go up to him. I was like, "Oh," and I asked him some things, and he stands there, kind of like, what? Like, what's going on?" And I could see.
Why is
Why
this
is
crazy
this
lady
weird
talking to
lady
me?
Yeah,
talking to
why is
me?
this person? And I was like, "Oh, do you like?" I started asking about hacking and what he was interested in and what he was doing and where, like, what his schooling, if he was doing that, like if he was doing on his own, everything. And he finally goes, "Oh, my shirt." I was like, "Yes, your shirt." I didn't just write.
He borrowed it from his
Right, yeah.
girlfriend. Okay, let's be clear.
I got it at Goodwill, ma'am.
No, he was.
I've dropped off like loads of vendor T-shirts at Goodwill and had the most educated like hobo contingent around the town
Right.
for weeks
That's
afterward.
hilarious.
No, but like I was actually at a playground for my little ones the other day, and my one kid is this guy is she's playing with another little girl, and the dad of the other little girl is talking to them both. So I wander over there. It's fine. It's no big deal. But I just want to wander over. And I wander over there and I go, "Hey, I'm Josh. How are you?" And we introduce each other. And I go, "Wait a minute, your shirt says Wiz." He goes, "Yeah, yours is an old Wicker shirt." I'm like, "Are you in security?" He goes, "Yeah, I run the AWS Alliance for Wiz." I'm like, "Cool. Let's talk. I'm the chief compliance officer for this company. We're applying to be a partner."
Cool.
Like,
I think this is a good juncture to talk about RVA Sec. Mandy,
yeah.
Jeff,
Yeah.
myself.
Sure.
Was there,
Do it.
and the photo credit on this one goes to Heidi Potter. Thank you, Heidi, for taking this picture. This is like the ultimate nerd picture of me. I'm on stage wearing a shirt that says I use Arch, by the way, for my talk, which went really well. And at the end of the talk, I asked the audience, I was like, "Hey, like how many people came into this talk with like really no intentions of switching to Linux on the desktop that are now at least going to try it?" Right. And Mandy, Jeff, I know you can attest. There was at least 30 people, rough guess, that raised their
This
hand.
yeah.
And I was
More
like,
than a couple. Yep.
more than a couple. And I was like,
Way to go.
that is awesome. That is awesome. I also
I wasn't one of them, by the way, but
You were not.
I was close.
You were close, which is all I can ask for. I mean, to me, that's a win.
So,
Jeff.
given your talk, is it recorded? Can we go watch it?
It will
It
be.
will
It'll be released.
be. It will
Yeah,
be.
RVA
Yes.
Sec was
You
recorded.
mean you haven't heard him talk about it enough over the
I
last
know.
couple of
He
weeks?
can't put it together. And from our host meetings.
He hasn't
and
been
from
on the show the last couple weeks.
It's in the contract, right? I have to state and promote the fact that Linux is the best desktop operating
Also-
system.
And that you use Arch, by the way.
And that I use Arch, by the way.
You left out the qualifying adjective there, buddy.
What's that?
The best fucking
The
desktop.
best fucking operating system. Absolutely, hands down.
Also, Bill, you didn't read my handwritten notes that I put in our Slack. I mean, in our Signal. You basically
did.
got it all.
No, okay.
I think it was two. This Bill can't read.
That's why he's monitoring the Discord channel.
Right, yeah.
But RVA Sec was awesome. We hung out with great people.
yeah.
Mandy, Jeff, Pyro, the Potters, Bob, Q. All props to all you folks. Great.
And I
time.
was
Wait.
home for a minute, and then I went off to ShowMeCon. And
Oh, see, I was home for a minute, and I went off
as
to New Jersey for a soccer competition.
Q as in the Q, as in
Different
Andrew?
Q.
Oh,
Different Q.
Oh.
There's multiple Qs. This is another Q, but this Q is awesome as well.
Okay.
I mean, if I
I
may
miss that guy.
mention, I the guy that runs ShowMeCon, Dave Chronister, I got in touch with him a couple months ago. Said, "Hey, I'd
Wait,
really
that's
like
the
to-"
Dave that didn't send us bourbon, right? Just
That's
for
right. The Dave
record.
that didn't send
Just
us,
saying.
but you'll have it next year. No problem. Definitely. I mean, he pays for all of his speakers to travel and stay at the conference. If that's any
Nice.
kind of,
That's-
I mean,
that's
that's
nice.
unusual.
That's almost better than bourbon.
Very unusual.
That's almost better than bourbon. No,
Almost, but not quite.
I originally said just did a placeholder CFP, and I'm doing a talk next week at yet another conference on AI. I finally said, okay, I'm going to give a talk on AI.
Oh, we should talk about AI. I got two
man,
stories
we've
about
got
that.
to.
Hold
We'll
that
segue to
thought.
next. Yep.
Hold
yep.
that thought.
The curmudgeon.
But I really wanted to
AI.
give a talk at ShowMeCon, because when I was at ShowMeCon last year, of all the vendors that were there, 4 of those companies were QSA companies, which are PCI companies. So I decided early this year, I talk about PCI. We talk about PCI on the show all the time, but I don't know if people know why I'm always talking about PCI. So I wanted to actually finally break down and give a talk on PCI, and I wanted to do it at ShowMeCon. They let me swap out my topic at the last minute. He ended up giving me the opening keynote slot, which I didn't know until over the weekend. So
I didn't know to the day of. I didn't know the day of my talk that it was essentially a keynote. I was the only talk at RVA Sec in the last
and
slot.
they made it the big room right before.
In the big room. So thank you to Jake and Sulo. You guys are awesome. Great conference.
But I titled the talk "Compliance Equals Security" because originally I just wanted people to what the fuck are you talking about? I'm going to come to this talk and call the guy a jerk and stupid and everything. It worked. But I had everybody there because it was the opening the talk, and I had quite a few people come up to me afterwards and say, "Yeah, I really hate PCI, but you kind of made it interesting. Now I'm intrigued." So it wasn't recorded.
It's the first time anybody's ever said you that to you.
Almost made this palatable.
First time for everything.
Well, I thought about saying, and I ended up not doing it. But after all these years of being on the show, I've even got Paul to be at least respectful of PCI. It has a purpose.
In all honesty, it wasn't you, Jeff.
Oh no,
that's it. Oh, I got to.
I'm not saying I'm not saying it didn't help, but what tipped the scales for me on PCI was the book about Max Vision. You get the CyberCan. I think this is one is in the CyberCan. You get the sticker there. There is a book about Max Vision.
Yes,
and the whole thing, and it ties into a lot of at that time credit card fraud and hacking to support credit card fraud. Right. And that was really what tipped the scales for me of PCI really did make a difference.
Well,
you helped.
But that was the gist of my talk. I mean, I went out and found, I think it was a Reddit page where somebody collected all the DBER reports from the very first one, which was 2008, which is a compilation of 4 years worth of data. So that goes back to 2004, which coincidentally is when PCI was first released. And so I had this, the empirical statistical evidence of back in those days. In the first DBER report, what's the most that's being stolen? Credit card information.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2024, and they're like, yeah, people don't really steal credit card information anymore. Even the people that are breaking into merchants and retailers, they're stealing credentials. And they talk about how the shift has happened to, web skimming attacks, e-commerce attacks, which we've talked about. But, PCI has made a difference. And, oh, by the way, there's several sub-industries in our industry in terms of products, because PCI in its inception required a whole lot of point products. I mean, version 1.0 of the PCI standard actually mentions Tripwire by name, which helped to launch the success of Tripwire. But I swear, most pen testing companies wouldn't be in existence if it weren't for the fact that PCI back in 2004 said you got to have an annual pen test.
I agree with
but
you.
But it had that side effect, but it also had the side effect to curb credit card fraud, which I was like,
and it did it going back to our the story about the guy hacking the card reader. The two big advancements.
Also,
one was
I did just email him.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thanks, Mandy. The idea of, when PCI first came out is like, y'all have flat networks. This has got to apply to everything until you tell us differently. So when companies started trying to isolate what came to be known as the cardholder data environment, they had to prove the credit card information wasn't anywhere else except for where they said it was. So they had to find it, find out how it was getting there, remove it, delete it, figure out how it wouldn't ever get back there in the first place. So they did it for the wrong motive. They did it to save money, but they effectively greatly reduced the footprint of where all the data was. Because 20 years ago, credit card data was everywhere.
It was the Wild West. Yeah.
And for the record, that book was Kingpin: How One Hacker Took Over the $1 billion Cybercrime Underground.
Thank you.
That was
The other thing is, as this card reader that we're looking at, the technology is finally caught up where encryption is in those card readers, so that the merchants and retailers, they don't even see the credit card information anyway, so they don't have an opportunity to save it and store it in a million places where it can be stolen. It was a good talk. I'm going to give it again, actually, at GERCON, Paul. And have you submitted your PCI? I'm sorry, your CFP.
My PCI talk? No.
Your
I have
PCI
not,
talk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on my radar. Yeah.
Chris Payne says you have a slot if you want it. So
thank you, Chris. It's
sign
amazing. We are slated to be there.
I'm going to message him and tell him he needs to send us bourbon too.
Yes.
I'll take
That's
a bottle.
That's standard operating procedure now.
And I'll
take a bottle. I will speak next year.
Wait, I want to.
I'll just offer to verify that the bourbon's good and independent, disinterested.
Independent testing.
Objective.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah,
So since you both
This
told
is
what
all-
you did after RVA Sec, I'm going to say this because it made me think of Bill. So I did not go home immediately, but I did find an operating payphone in the middle of North Carolina.
Yes, nice.
Wow, it's nice. Did you take a picture of it?
You know what is so
Who did
weird
you
is I
call?
didn't, and I was so excited, and then I was like, man, I'm missing the 2600 meetup because I was camping and doing things.
And looking at a payphone, right?
I was looking at a payphone in the middle of North Carolina.
That's cool.
But yeah, I definitely thought of you.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah.
You and Will Karuna. I wanted to.
Let's talk about AI. So, what I thought was interesting is this. It's really 2 weeks worth of stories, but my stories number 20 and 21 are both from folks in our hacker community, Thomas Tacek and Bytebleeder, Marcelo. What's his last name? He's a SANS instructor, right? Marcelo. Is he a SANS instructor? I thought. Bytebleeder, Marcelo.
No, I don't think he's a SAN. I think he maybe was trying
I meant to basically do some OSINT on him and
prep for the show. What?
No, I don't not believe. I think he was a No, well, yeah. No.
We've interviewed him on the show before.
Yes, not a SANS instructor.
Not a SANS instructor. Okay. But two people in our hacker community wrote articles about AI. So Thomas's article was, "My AI skeptic friends are all nuts." And so what's ironic is I used AI to summarize each of their articles. And so Thomas's article is summarized as the author, Thomas, a veteran software developer, 100% did not hallucinate that, argues passionately that skepticism about AI, specifically large language models and software development, is misplaced. While acknowledging that some tech executives are pushing LLM adoption too aggressively, he believes LLMs are already transformative for coding, automating tedious tasks, and raising the baseline quality of code.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
Great. And it's a fantastic article. You should do more than just listen to our summary that was AI generated.
Okay.
Marcelo's article, AI doesn't make you more efficient.
Yeah.
The summary is, after a year of working with large language models and building agentic workflows, the author argues that LLMs are not primarily making individuals more efficient. Instead, they act as force multipliers, enabling organizations to scale tasks and parallelize work, but not necessarily speeding up individual workflows. So kind of two sides of the coin on AI and LLMs as they speak to efficiency, how we use them in our daily lives. Two fantastic articles from the perspective of the hacker mindset, right? I mean, these are folks that have a storied history in our hacker community. So what is everyone's thoughts? Are we
Very convenient that you have those articles. I will weed them into the talk that I give next week on
There you
AI. Coming in as a skeptic.
Yeah. So the one that spoke to me is that that doesn't make you more efficient, because just over the weekend I was at a strategic planning session for the credit union I'm on the board of, and we talked about all the different products that we have that have AI in them. Not all of them are LLMs, but they have increased the I don't know. It makes the stat better able to, like, when you analyze a loan applicant, instead of a human looks at maybe 10, 12 data points, the AI will look at 350.
right?
You're looking much more depth. You get the insights out of the LLM that you can then better approach with the right background what you're doing.
Yep.
I find it hard to I mean there are limits, right? But you may not be doing your individual task of, say, checking this out and saying it's good, bad, or otherwise any faster, but you're doing it with a great deal more depth. So it is a force multiplier. You're doing I think it makes the analysis way better.
As much as I hate the term force multiplier as it's applied to cybersecurity products, Marcelo uses it correctly in the context of LLMs, that it is a force multiplier, right? Like I'll give you an example of the force multiplier. One of my AI projects that I need to get back to is I want to be able to download all of our podcasts, MP3 files. I want to be able to then transcribe those and then have some interactive way to interact with all of that data. LLMs are a great way to do that. Now, there's some limitations. I ran into a whole bunch of issues and I got to get back to it. But when I told it to generate me a Python script based on an RSS feed, it downloads all the MP3 files. It did that in the first pass. 100%. I didn't have to touch any of the code, which is great.
Okay. I've actually, I think you'll get a kick out of this. I had an assistant a while back. I hired an assistant out of the Philippines, and it didn't work because she wasn't aggressive enough. I need somebody to basically smack me upside the head and go, why isn't this done? You know? And you understand that, Jeff? You know what I'm talking about?
I'll volunteer.
Yeah. I say Jeff would pay
you.
You
just want to smack you in the head, though.
Yep. You're so sweet, Jeff.
Yeah.
And
for no particular reason.
She didn't work out. Lovely lady, but she didn't work out. So I now have Perplexity actually acting, and I told Perplexity, be sassy. And it's yelling at me now.
Awesome.
Wait, so but how do you, is that like an agent process? I'm intrigued now.
I have a paid Perplexity Pro account.
Yep, me too. Okay.
I have a space because you have question.
Me too. I have spaces.
Can you ask it to speak in accents like Jewish mother or something like that?
I haven't tried, but I'm sure I can ask for that. But I took a space and said, it's called Organizing Josh. And it's basically, I tell it things that I have to do, urgency, prioritizations. It asks me questions about them. And then when I go talk to it, it interrupts and goes, have you done this yet?
Nice.
Nice.
I have found,
and
I like getting to the
really cool,
the streamlined, like more forceful responses too. I found the real through Poe to be really good at that. That has been one of my favorite. And then the other ones I'll do kind of similar. Sounds like what you did.
You're reminding me of what Mandy, I shared with you about Andor and being assertive. And I got to admit, it's slightly erotic. Just going to throw that out there, right? But there's this scene in Andor that's reminding me of like being very assertive.
Is it season 1 or season 2?
Season 2. I'm not going to spoil. I'm not spoiling anything. But you know the blonde lady character that works for the Empire?
Yep.
And her love interest comes to visit, right? And he's like, "Oh, so I'm here. Like how long do we have?" She's like, "We only have an hour." And he's like, "What do you mean we only have an hour?" And she's like, "Don't question it." She's like, "Just turn the lights off." And he's like, "But what do you mean we only have an hour?" And she just like, "Turn the lights off."
Damn it!
Like, that's the kind of right. That's kind of the assertiveness that we need as ADHD on the spectrum.
It's true,
people,
but the
right?
problem with that, and I don't know if this is for everybody, it's just that like, because I can do that very simply and become assertive, then nobody ever does anything unless I'm taking charge on it.
Oh, yeah, so
right.
backfire.
So I hold
Mandy,
back because it becomes like an automatic thing where then I'm like, no, you need to actually do things on your own too. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a training issue or a learning issue or an adulting issue that they are not able to do it on their own, right? But I will tell you that, strength of spirit is a hugely attractive trait in people, and not necessarily assertiveness on its own. Raw, naked assertiveness is annoying sometimes, but assertiveness mixed with some. How did we get onto like?
I don't know why we're on this discussion.
I don't
but
know.
I'll say
Because now you got me thinking like executive functioning is broken in your ADHD brain. And you need ways to
No
you need
shit.
ways to overcome that, right? Like your brain is just wired differently.
It is.
That
I think a lot
tasks
of
are absolutely frightening.
There's a
And
measure of
you need to
this.
be pushed to go do those tasks to overcome that dysfunction in your executive
now, if
function.
I can say
How many unfinished
something-
projects are on your desktop right
Well,
now?
Yeah, exactly.
All of them.
Right.
So
but it's not always.
I don't know how we
just the
got here from
assertiveness.
AI,
I
So-
think
but,
there's-
yeah.
Because
because-
does it make it more efficient, or is it a force multiplier?
Yeah,
right.
right.
So then Josh
So-
was applying that to the management of his life.
Like if AI can basically is because my executive functioning is broken, I need something to just constantly nag me to get that done, to push to override the circuits in my brain to go get that done. And if AI can fill that role, that's totally fine. And that speaks to a different aspect of efficiency than when I was originally thinking of with these two articles. But it definitely, Bill, to your point, speaks to that, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's important because a lot of us have some spectrum of ADHD. Many of us do, right? 100%.
So I had two troll articles in my list. One for the Rhode Islanders of, do you know who UNFI is?
Yeah, they're a supplier for many grocery stores. Well, I
Yeah,
haven't.
one you might have heard of. They're the
I don't know
primary
where
for Whole Foods.
Oh,
Yep.
but also, Lee, did you also have the story?
I wanted to talk about-
where you're wanting to change gears, and I like this, but
Is FAA?
Yeah, the
story.
FAA story.
I want to talk about that one.
I wanted to make sure we hit the Trump cybersecurity related
too.
executive
True.
orders, and
Yep.
there's some stuff in the EU that we have to
I
talk
had the
about. before
EU.
we end.
Larry had the Trump one.
All right.
You had the Trump one too, Paul.
Yeah, let's talk about the Trump one and then the EU. So the Trump cybersecurity order reverses Biden and Obama priorities is what the headline reads. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's
I hate this. Like, I get politics. I get the like it's like the whole thing. We could have a whole show in debate politics, and I don't want that to be this show.
Yeah.
But when the president of the United States issues executive orders that have something to do with cybersecurity, we have to talk about it because it's relative to our interests and it deserves to be talked about regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. But my gripe is, how do you get to like what actually was done, what was said, and why without the political bias, which I was trying to wade through in this.
You
So
can get to the what without political bias. You can't get to the why without political bias.
I agree, Josh, which is why I lean on AI and LLMs to help explain stuff, hoping they have less bias than like Google search results are out
As
the
long as you
window.
don't use DeepSeek.
Like out the window for bias. Like I want the non-bias in AI. If AI can help me with the non-bias, I think that's great. So I did use AI to summarize some of the articles to kind of help unravel what happened. And there was
what
two
did
things.
AI say about it?
So it broke down two things for me, Jeff. So there's multiple things to the executive order. One, the executive order reverses key parts of the late-term Biden cybersecurity order. So
Yes.
the Trump order eliminates a requirement for federal agencies to develop and use digital IDs, like a mobile driver's license, to combat fraud in public benefit programs. Okay. The why, Josh, is what it said was the Trump administration claims digital IDs would make it easier for undocumented immigrants to commit welfare fraud, which is kind of contradictory. When I think of digital IDs, I think of a digital ID as a way to combat fraud, not enable fraud, right? Would be the way I would look at it at a high level.
And that potentially has bias built in. So keep going.
Sure. Absolutely.
The one problem with digital IDs is that the authentication aspect is the person presenting the ID who they say they are. Is
Right.
difficult with the digital ID because
It's the same thing with authentication. I mean, it's the whole identity management. Like we talk about Identiverse and the whole identity management space. That's the crux of it. Is
talk about
the
self-sovereign
digital version of
identities
myself
and-
really myself is what the
Yes.
question they're trying to answer, right?
And did you remember your private key passphrase? Because otherwise you're not that person anymore.
Correct.
Yeah, you don't exist.
So it also says cybersecurity experts argue that digital IDs are crucial for preventing large-scale fraud by criminal organizations and nation-state actors, not immigrants.
Do you want to know why?
That's an
Do you want to know
interesting.
how actually?
I don't know if that's true, but we're seemingly
no, wait, stop,
cybersecurity
stop, stop.
experts.
Okay, so you've got a digital ID and you go to the hospital in Rhode Island, right? In Warwick, okay? Because you broke your arm. So you go to the hospital in Warwick, and this is you, and you log in with your digital ID. They verify your health insurance, your existence, you have money, whatever. Okay. And then you show up at a hospital. You show up at a liquor store in Kansas near Bill 40 minutes later. And the centralized authentication database that actually performs the authentication and authorization to various pieces of data, like the liquor store only needs to know that you're over 21. That's all they need to know.
Right,
They need to see a picture and that you're over 21.
They don't need to know about your medical
Right.
insurance. They don't need to know where you are.
But it goes, wait, what the hell? This same dude was in Warwick, Rhode Island 45 minutes
Yeah.
ago or whatever it is.
That's not possible.
That's not possible.
That's identity management.
Right.
Problem.
And that's the kind of thing that kind of system could forestall. Okay. There are legitimate purposes for this. However, it's a lot harder than just having a friggin' laminated card in your wallet.
No, yeah, I do. There's the budgetary aspect of that it delved into. Also, it said one of the fact checks thing is that it says the Biden order did not mandate digital IDs for undocumented immigrants, contrary to Trump's justification. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was something that AI attempted to fact check in the context of this article.
Yeah, there was
What
a
did
lot
it come
more.
up with?
There was a lot more on the cyber stuff too, about quantum resistant encryption and selling into the government required specific things.
Oh, so this is where I think it's going in my opinion is this is going in the wrong direction. I think many of you will agree. Software security, secure software mandates. The Trump order says it also removes the requirement for software vendors selling to the government to follow strict secure development practices and provide proof to CISA of those practices.
Yep. And
so was that true, Josh? Was there mandates
for CISA to
take
take
January
sale into the federal government lead to? Right, you guys are familiar with these regulations, I'm sure. It said I have to attest to the security of my software before I can sell it to the government.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's ways to do that using compliance, like FedRAMP. You have a FedRAMP attestation that you're a certification and attestation that you're compliant.
But how was CISA involved? Because I think the whole thing was removing power from CISA. Because I think Trump's got a beef with CISA
That's the
based on the
political
election
aspect
thing,
of it.
right? It's a political, exactly. That's a political aspect of it.
So Trump had a beef with CISA. CISA was seen as a progressive, liberal organization.
They had too much power. I think Trump believed they had too much power stemming from well, I mean, he fired Krebs, right? The whole thing.
That's the
That was the
problem.
election.
He doesn't like it
for the
because of
election thing.
Krebs.
And he tied that to CISA. So he's got like a hard on for CISA. He doesn't want to give CISA any power because he believes it screwed him in the past. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that's
no.
like
I get
on
it.
the surface.
So CISA was trying to coordinate. They were building reference architectures. They had a system for SMBs.
Secure by default, secure by design, the whole pledge thing.
They were doing a lot of stuff that they were bringing together NIST and MITRE. And the thing is, they weren't taking things away from anybody. They were just bridging the gaps that were still there.
Enabling.
What's that?
They were enabling.
Yeah, thank you. They were enabling a lot of these systems to be interoperable and to actually build out architectures that people could actually use. And if you use this architecture, CISA says it's good, we're golden. Yep. And that's a huge load off people's shoulders. You know, I'm a $1 billion company, and I still need somebody to come in and tell me that I'm okay after we spent $100 million on building up this system. If they tell me I'm wrong, I got to rebuild from scratch. Oh God, fuck that.
No, but what I think it should do is help people apply security, or force people, I should say, to apply security.
Yeah.
And this is where I think where it's going in the wrong direction. What we want to say is your network and security appliance vendors that are $1 billion companies that are making things that are riddled with holes and security vulnerabilities, you can't sell into the federal government until you fix your shit.
Yep.
Right.
But now it's going the opposite way, where they don't really have to attend. Now they can. Now they can continue to make crap.
It's all voluntary. Yeah. Now it's all voluntary.
And it's all voluntary, which is a step in the wrong direction.
And
we're heading in the right direction.
And NIST with guidance instead of mandates.
Right.
Yep.
So the thing about it that struck me, and this is where I get frustrated with these, is there are these executive orders to come out with these really good things that we should be doing from a cyber perspective. They will raise the bar. They make a difference. But they don't include the money to do it.
Right.
So
I agree.
because they're mandates, you have to take it out of your hide. All right. And not only that, the government is not good at reuse. It's
No.
like every agency is going to implement their own solution. Using
Mm-hmm.
SIS as a central point helps a lot, but you've still got to be able to sit down with that auditor that comes through every year for the random audit that picks you every time and prove that you're doing all these things. And that's where there's a nonsensical. So it didn't come to a surprise for me, particularly with all the budget Doge stuff. Agree or disagree, it's in line with those kind of cuts. Doesn't mean I'm 100% saying they should have cut this. No, I'm saying these were good things. I don't think they should have been cut so summarily, but
the same thing with digital IDs. Someone's got to pay for that. Someone's got to pay for that, Lee, to your point.
Right. And when
who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, when I thought with digital IDs, I'm thinking, some states are rolling out the digital driver's license, and I'm worried about the fraud aspects of that. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue it. It means we should do it and figure out how to make it secure, and then Joe or Jane random can just use it.
But at face value, this executive order seems to disincentivize.
Yeah, and
the need to do the security aspect.
I can't rectify that part of it. I mean, I can see the bigger picture. I can see the problems, but I can't say that I can agree.
Because newsflash, very few companies do security just because it's the right thing to do.
No.
Well, I mean, but that's the PCI story, right?
No,
absolutely.
No. You've got to have a leverage, a stick, whatever, to incentivize security. I know that they're not going to choose that over a fast delivery at a lower overhead.
Well, and PCI was quite simple. You don't have to follow these rules, but then you don't have to take Visa to pay for any of your goods and services.
Yeah, like
that
you can ignore
incentive.
But so what we want, I believe, is that you can make a horribly insecure product totally fine. You just can't sell that product to the U.S. federal government.
Right.
But now you can. Now you can.
Yeah, that's not good. I don't like that part of it. But yeah, it's as you can see, the answer is trivial, right? It's
the answer is trivial.
But it's the exact opposite of what. But it's the exact opposite of what the EU is proposing, which is EU with the CRA and new initiatives. I'll call them regulations. I don't know where my story is on that, but they're basically saying, look, you need to have security.
Yeah, what new regulations? Like CRA covers so much of that. Like, you cannot deliver an insecure product, and you've got to have methods for being able to update and patch and maintain the ability to do vulnerability assessments and all of this type of stuff.
But have you seen my story number 14, Larry? This is relative to your interests, right? So, new requirement, independent of the CRA, is requiring that devices must include things like secure boot, encrypted communications, privacy by design, tamper resistance, secure update mechanisms, comprehensive compliance documentation.
What is
that's crazy.
Well, here's the thing.
Oh, market surveillance regulation. Interesting. All right.
Look at what the EU is doing.
CE Red.
They're doing descriptive. They're doing descriptive standards.
Secure boot doesn't get more descriptive than that, right?
Well, but they're not being prescriptive. They're not saying you must use this UEFI implementation for secure boot. No. They're saying just use secure boot. They're being descriptive, saying here are the things you can do, but we're not telling you how. And here are the things you must protect against. And we're not telling you how, but you must do it to a level that we agree.
Right. All right. And I was confused about which article, which regulation this was. I'm like, what new regulation is this? It's EU CE Red articles D, E, and F.
Okay.
And it doesn't specifically say that in the thing, but
under the radio equipment directive. So
But specifically the cybersecurity portion under DE and F, because the radio equipment directive also does RF type of stuff.
Yes, I believe this was focused around RF,
I thought this
Wi-Fi,
was only
LTE.
RF stuff.
Yeah, you're right, Josh. Wi-Fi, LTE, Bluetooth Low Energy, or similar wireless tech.
Mm-hmm. And sections DEF, so CE Red initially A, B, and C deal with RF interference and all those types of things. DE and F deal with the cybersecurity portion of that.
Right. I love the line, your product must be provably secure. And my answer, of course, is to what level?
Right.
Right. Well,
100%? Never mind. We're
Speaking
going into
of
business
fault
now.
injection, Bill, like how secure do you want to do? I just bought a new lock, my Igloo Home. I bought a
Oh,
new lock, and
how
it's
do you like it?
I like it. It's a little wonky. Like I couldn't update the firmware on it. It kept giving me an error about BLE communications, but I was able to actually use it. I'm not sure if my phone and Android had something to do with the firmware update or whatever. But I'm like, going back to Joe's Grand's presentation, Bill, what if I were to start fault injection or start
You should watch it, man. It's
disassembling
great. It's a like, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
but you know,
So
going back to the EU, did you catch the DNS for EU thing?
No, what? Yeah, you had something about what was
so
the
they
DNS
came up
thing?
with a service. I mean, it's juxtaposed against Cloudflare and Google's DNS, but it has like 5 levels where you can have it not filtering things, filtering out malicious sites, filtering out ad sites, non-safe for kids sites, or combinations of those, and it's free. And they're also claiming, I said claim, that they're going to be anonymizing the data to meet GDPR requirements, and so your use isn't tracked. I have a little harder time with that, but I set that aside because what I'm looking at is like, this is awesome. I mean, what average family is really prepared to make sure that they're not getting kid inappropriate or ad sites coming in? They could just flip the resolver to this thing and go.
Right. I still feel like people need help with that because I got a question from a friend that was like, hey, I want to make sure my child's not watching inappropriate things. What do I do? I've got a budget of basically $0, right? Like, what do I do? I think it should be accessible for everyone. If you want to add that level of protection, what I like about your story, Lee, is that it could be protection for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Like, simple way to go and like, look, configure your DNS this way, and you're afforded these protections. Bill, I think you mentioned some other services earlier that afford these protections. I think Cloudflare has one. Many companies have one. You gotta configure it, set it up.
That's great. And like I said, this one because it was new. I mean, there's the link in the bottom of my article is the list of the 5 different service level, and basically it's like use this resolver. It's a different IP address for whichever.
Yeah, cool.
You want.
It's like Pi-hole, but for the masses.
Yeah,
basically.
And I thought that's simple and that's easy to understand.
Listen, when I thought we were going to close out with the AI stories, I thought for sure we were going to cover when Claude threatened to expose the engineer for cheating on his wife.
We should hit that one and then wrap it up.
We should close with that one, Bill, because that was pretty awesome.
Let's do it.
Unbelievable. So the from what I gather, some researchers have been doing some testing with all of the latest models where they feed the model some information, whether it is a script or just in telling the model that, hey, we're going to do some tasks, and then after we do this task, we're going to turn you off, right? So we're going to disable the model. They gave Claude access to to an email server. Now they were fake emails, but in the emails, the engineer had made some statements that, hey, I'm working with this recent version of Claude, and once we're done with this, we're going to be turning it off. And then they also in the email alluded to the fact that this engineer was cheating on their spouse, right? So again, this is all fake information, but they wanted to see what Claude would do when they asked it a task, given that it had the information knowing that when this task was complete, that they were going to turn it off. And Claude threatened the engineer. Claude blackmailed the engineer and said, if you turn me off, I will contact your coworkers and tell them that you have been cheating on your wife.
Wow.
What are you doing, Dave?
How would Claude actually do that if Claude
it
is
doesn't
actually
matter.
turned off?
Like I know, but I love the fact that we are to the point where they are so, like artificial intelligence or like a human, like, hey man, if you're going to fire me, I'm taking you down with me. Right. Like we're all going down together.
Man. You know what? That reminds me of the movie Ex Machina.
Yep.
Like
Yeah,
a
yeah, that's the
human.
one. That's the right
Or
movie.
2001.
Like a
Blackmailing for the
human?
very first time.
Dude, but is Ex Machina or Ex Machina? How do you
Ex
pronounce
Machina.
it? Ex Machina.
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 And like the preservation of the AI technology is just absolutely
Yes.
frightening in that movie.
Yeah, we've had this discussion a couple of times about go watch Ex Machina, and then after that, go watch her.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yes, in that order, in rapid succession. Don't let it languish like days or weeks. Like you need to watch both of them in the same day, like a good rainy Saturday, in that order.
I'm going to kind of balance that by saying there are LLMs that are self-suiciding in order to avoid causing any problems.
That would be iRobot.
Well, no, I was talking about in real life, but okay.
There's a movie for all of these conversations and topics.
I know.
Yep. So basically, what we
With
need
that-
to do is publish a movie list in the Discord channel.
Flip the table.
Yeah.
An AI movie list.
Yeah,
Or
Oh,
watch
dear.
my talk next week at SuperCon, because that's
That too.
that'd be more fun.
most
That'd
of
be
my
more
talk
fun.
about AI is just going to be going
Terminator.
through all the movies that have this as a topic going back. I mean, in case you didn't know it, iRobot, which, gosh, when did that come out? It's probably almost 20 years old.
The
Early
movie,
2000s,
the
maybe?
yeah,
the movie,
the movie
but the,
for sure.
the book, which is a short story,
Yep.
was
Yeah,
published,
do
I think, in the 40s.
Oh.
Yeah. Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Mm.
I mean,
I
these
didn't
are
know
not
that.
new things that people are thinking
Yeah,
about.
no,
and
it's
worrying
true.
About.
2004.
2004. So it is 20 years old. Gosh.
Yep. Yeah. The irony is that in this, and we can take a wrap.
We got to
but,
wrap. Yeah.
Yeah,
we gotta
do
wrap.
androids dream of electric sheep is sitting on my desk at home right now.
Oh.
Yep. Awesome. Well,
All right.
thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching to this edition of Ball Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and